title of this video, 5G. The real concern is not what the focus is on. Okay, so from time to time you might see me look to the side. I might look down because I've got a few other things going on, so just bear with me as I do that. Okay, so let's just get on with this presentation. And I want to say give thanks for anybody who is watching, who sticks in, even if it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I really appreciate you. Okay, this is a very important topic. Okay, so let's get going. So George Carlin, everybody loves George Carlin. Why? Because he speaks his mind. Okay, so a quote that he says, sooner or later, the people in this country are going to learn that the government doesn't give a blank blank, okay, about them. Government doesn't care about you or your children or your rights or your welfare or your safety. It simply doesn't give a blank about you. It's only interested in its own power, keeping it and expanding it wherever possible. This quote is very important to our presentation. And who is he talking about? Who is George Carlin talking about? George Carlin is not talking about any individual. Okay, it's not, because people in governments come and go. It's not talking about the individuals within government. So this isn't directed towards any particular person or anything like that. It's talking about government as a structure. Okay, government as a system. And that these governments that govern us all. I'm here in the UK. A lot of my people who are watching are going to be in Bermuda. Hopefully I get some people in the States who are going to watch. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. Okay? The government is not there for you as an individual, for you or your children, so on and so on. They're there as a system. And it's very important to understand what George Carlin is saying. So for me, as an individual, there's no government that can look out for my rights individually, okay, or my ideal utopia for me, or that I want for my family. Okay, there's no government. So I took a walk the other day, family. So hopefully my technology works. And we're just going to take a minute so I can set the stage for my utopia, okay? Because this is my presentation and I'm talking about 5G from my point of view, from my perspective. If you have a different point of view, you have a different perspective, that's on you, okay? But this is from my perspective, my point of view, what I foresee for my family, for my progeny, for my generations coming down the line, okay? And for people that think like me. So just bear with me on this video. So I'm going to pause it there. Hopefully, give me a thumbs up if you could actually hear what was in the video. I know you could see it, but if you could hear also. This was a video that I took the other day. I went for a drive. You know, here in the UK we're on lockdown. I went for a drive. I had to, you know, I wanted to go for a walk to just get some fresh air. And the nice thing about the UK, they have a lot of parks and walking trails and so on and so on. And I was able to find this location. It was absolutely beautiful. Okay, family, it was absolutely beautiful. You can see it's a forest. I'm not saying it's an old growth forest because it looks like there's a lot of new growth, but the trees were quite mature. Okay, it had what they call over here blue boughs. They come out in the springtime. They were carpeting the hillside. And all the birds were singing. Okay, so I want you weren't there with me, because it wasn't not a soul there with me, but I know the people that are watching could envision and imagine what it must have been like. Very peaceful. I sat down and I was able to do some meditation, and this is my utopia. This isn't the exact thing, because my utopia would be like that, but it would be probably somewhere that was a bit hotter, a bit sunnier, maybe the ocean next door. This is my utopia. Okay, what you see here, for those people that are joining me, this video clip, me in the forest. There are other people we need to understand, okay, that's not their utopia. That's not the vision that they want for the future. Not for their future, not for your future, not for your children's future, not for your children's future. They don't want this. And we're going to talk about that. Okay? That's what this is all about. Okay? Now, let's get this straight. Okay? This is not about coronavirus and 5G. Let's just get that straight. Okay? This isn't about any theories to do with coronavirus and how 5G might be causing the symptoms that we see in coronavirus and so on and so on. That's not to say that we shouldn't pay attention to those things and we shouldn't educate ourselves and either take an actual interest in what is real and what isn't real. Okay? But I'm making it clear because a lot of people will accuse people that talk about 5G and put them all in one camp. All right? And in the UK, there's had a lot of, there's been a lot of news coverage of coronavirus and 5G and people tearing down 5G masks or what they think to be 5G mobile masks because they're feeling that it's causing coronavirus symptoms. This is not about coronavirus and 5G. I'm not one of those people. So my message is clear. Okay. So I've made that clear on the video. I'm on record. However, I see that as a distraction personally. Okay. Those sorts of theories, especially if they're unfounded, are going to take us and are going to distract us from the realities of what 5G looks like in the future. And that's what we need to be more careful of. So now that I've stated that, let's keep going, because I said I have a lot of information. Okay. Just reading one of my mother's comments. It's technology. They can watch both. Mom, they can watch the premier's comments and they can watch my thing on the internet as well. Or they can watch it later. So anyway, let's keep moving on. This is not about coronavirus and 5G. I got my mother commenting on Facebook and watching it live. All right. So I've already been accused, okay, of being somebody that wears a tinfoil hat. Not just by this 5G thing. I'm talking about other things, okay? I'm talking about people who I work around, people who, professionals who I work around in the science field. When they say that, it's an insult, basically, okay? They're basically saying that you're somebody that believes in aliens, you're a conspiracy theorist, you can't practice, you don't know, you're believing in things that are far out there, okay? And the tinfoil hat is all about protecting yourself from the forces out there. That's why people accuse you of that. It's like an insult, okay? So despite me holding a BSc, okay, a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, you can read about it, so on and so on. You can go online, people that know me, all right? Despite that, they will still say things like that, okay, that I'm a tinfoil hat wearer. But that's fine, because really, it's not about knowing things, it's about questioning everything. Okay? It's about being a critical thinker, and for too long people have been able to believe whatever the news media or whatever other power sources are bringing to them. All right? And now as the internet opens up knowledge and connects different communities around the world, it allows many people to go beyond what is being spoon-fed to them. And people don't like that. They don't like you to question the status quo, especially if they have a vested interest in that status quo. That's it right there. If they have a vested interest in the status quo, they don't want you to question, okay, and critically analyze alternate realities and alternate interpretations of it, okay. Just let me get this internet going. Yes, so we need to question everything and be a critical thinker, okay? And it says over here in the meme or mem, whatever you want to call it, it says the NSA collects almost 5 billion records a day that can pinpoint a cell phone anywhere in the world, track its movements, and map the personal relationships of the person using it. This is interesting because I'll tell you what this means. You know that those crazy people who wear tinfoil hats because they think the government is tracking them. It turns out they were right, and that's by Jimmy Kimmel, you know, the well-known talk show host. Okay? Yes. We need to question everything, and we need to be able to look in the future and think of alternate interpretations of things, because that's how we're able to see things that others who have vested interests might not want us to see, or things that even if they want you to see, they might not have thought of themselves. Okay? So this is really, really important, to be a critical thinker. And that's what I've done for myself, okay, about 5G. And I'm presenting my own opinion. I totally agree with you forming your own, but I'm presenting my own at this time. So let's keep going. So, as I pointed to earlier with my first video, okay, that I showed earlier in the forest, this is really a question of the global commons. What do we mean by that? Now you have to remember that my first degree is in marine and environmental science. I took up this degree not because I just wanted to go and get educated in any degree. It's because before I went to university, I had a passion about the environment. Okay, I had a passion about the environment, and the passion comes from the inside. It's not from externally driven, meaning it's not about salary and you know, finding some grand career, because I definitely wouldn't have chosen environmental science. It's because I have a love and a passion for the environment, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm still like that to this day. It's shaped me, it's shaped my faith, my spirituality. I don't want to use the word faith. It's shaped my spirituality, okay? And a big part of that was understanding this term, environmental justice. What is it? Environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, culture, education, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. In this global system of capitalism that we live in, okay, and I'm not anti-capitalism, but the reality is that there is a pyramid that we all know about, where the control of resources and wealth is at a very small percentage at the top. Okay? That elite that we talk about, that 1%. What that means is that in many cases, due to commercial interests, there is not always environmental justice. There's not always equity. And this issue of 5G and the use of electromagnetic radiation in general, in a commercial sense, is a big part of that. Why? Well, it has to do with the global commons. What's the global commons? The global commons, as Wikipedia says, okay, is a term typically used to describe international, supranational, and global resource domains in which common pool resources are found. Okay? Global commons include the Earth's shared natural resources, such as the high oceans, the atmosphere, and outer space, and the Antarctic in particular. Cyberspace may also meet the definition of global commons. They are Earth's shared natural resources. They belong to all of us. No one has the right to claim ownership or to pollute or degrade in any way that they can this global commons, and the atmosphere, which includes the electromagnetic atmosphere around us, is part of that global commons that belongs to all of us. Just because you have money, just because you have influence, does not give you the right to impose a change in the atmosphere around people. Okay? And as I said earlier, governments change. But the thing about governments is they put in laws, and it's very hard to get those laws to change for those people that lack the power. Okay? And so when those laws are changed, it allows the global commons to be used in ways that many times affects the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And we're going to learn that we need to learn from history, okay, and understand that 5G and electromagnetic radiation in general, we need to be prepared to make sure that we don't end up on the bottom of the barrel. We need to make sure that we demand for people like me, if you want a future that involves 5G and what the structure that we're going to talk about, that's on you. But that doesn't mean that you can impose your idea of a utopia, including the electrosmog, which is the increasing amount of radiation that's around us, okay, on me, on my family, on my community, so on and so on. So this is the basis of my claim and my right to state what I think is appropriate. Is that the atmosphere belongs to all of us. Okay? And I shouldn't have to harm it. So I shouldn't be able to harm it and take away from someone else's enjoyment just for the sake of my enjoyment. That's what the global commons is about. Okay? So we're going to get deep into that. Okay? Apologies because I'm trying to open up another laptop on the side, so sometimes you'll see me looking for those people that are just joining. So now that I've established that, let's go on. So everybody will tell me with 5G, and I have a lot of technical people that are on the feed, and I have a lot of technical people that will watch this in the future. And what they're going to say to me is they're going to say there's nothing wrong with 5G, there's nothing wrong with 4G, 3G. People have been using mobile phones for decades. People have been using radio for decades, radar for decades. There's no issues with it. And so there are limits that have been established, and because there are limits that are established, then it should be fine. Let us be reminded, okay, and I put a little timeline, I'm going to try to go quick through these things, that history has taught us that the things we once thought were safe or were fine sometimes end up affecting us in ways that we don't anticipate. Okay? And with 5G, which is not fully in place yet, no matter what anybody tells you, the future plans are not fully in place, we have an opportunity to make sure that our future and that we don't have to backtrack like we did in some things. So let's look at this little advertisement here. 1949, Viceroy, which is a brand of cigarette. And the advertisement says, Viceroys filter the smoke. As your dentist, I would recommend Viceroys, okay? Doctors smoke cigarettes was a favorite advertising ruse, as was the age-old smoking is cool argument, one that is still happening today. What is this about? Most of us will know, because most people that will watch this will know that there was a time when cigarettes were not only thought of as cool, but as healthy. Okay? Cigarettes were thought of as healthy also. Alright? So but that's changed. Look at the timeline. This was in 1949. Okay. It was not until 1964 that the United States Surgeon General published a report. And this report showed clearly that smoking was linked to health issues, particularly cancer. Okay, that was in 1964. So this led to millions of American smokers to quit, the banning of certain advertising, the requirement of warning labels on tobacco. All right, so what's that, 50? That was about 15 years after this ad. Once smoking was cool and was thought of as healthy, and then in 1964, the United States Surgeon General's report on smoking and health was published. Fine, okay, cool. But smoking was still allowed, wasn't it? We know, because it's happened in our lifetime. All right, it's happened in our lifetime that there was a smoking ban put in place that you couldn't smoke indoors. Before that, you could smoke indoors. You could smoke on airplanes. So after the 1964, I was born in 1974. After that happened, you could still smoke in places like airplanes. Okay, you could still smoke indoors. But so it was only in 2007. That's 40 years later that they decided to do the smoking ban and making it illegal to smoke. Why? Because they recognized that it was not just first-hand smoke, it was second-hand smoke that was also impacting everyone. But it didn't stop there, because then in 2015, and I'm basing a lot of my stuff on the UK, all right, it was illegal. It became illegal for people to smoke in a car in the UK, all right, in 2015. And then in 2017, they changed the packaging. Okay, and now they have it where the cigarettes are held behind a closed cabinet in all of the shops. In other words, what I'm trying to say, there is an evolution of what people thought was safe and okay to what we understood now. And if you look at the timeline from 1950 to 2017, that is 60 years before we are where we are today. Okay, in terms of the timeline. All right, that's not the only example I have. Let's look at water. Okay, this is something I use in my teaching all the time. Here we have on the left a figure, death rates for typhoid fever in the USA. Okay, and it's not just in the USA that this will apply to, but we're just going to use this graph. You can find this information online. It's very easy to find online. Now, you can see here on the graph, just trying to get the cursor to come out, that here in this line is when chlorination began. On the bottom is the dates. Okay, so around, what's that, 1909 or whatever it was, chlorination began. And once chlorination began, the death rates for typhoid fever dropped right off. Chlorination helps to save lives. Okay, chlorination helps to save lives. And you can see a similar graph, or not a similar graph, but a corresponding graph chart on this side, where the countries that have access to safe drinking water, which are the bottom ones, have the least deaths for children under 5 years of age. Okay, so chlorination saves lives because it helps people to access safe drinking water. And I'm not going to get too deep into it. What's my point? Even though chlorination started in 1909 and it's helped many people to survive, including many children. What's that? So this is in the hundreds of thousands deaths they think have been prevented due to having chlorinated water. Okay, we still need to have limits on the amount of chlorine found in water. This chart, this standard at the bottom, is from my local water company. I can look it up. I can look up the water quality in my area, and I can get a report on the water quality, and it will show me what the limits are, okay, in milligrams per liter for chloride or for chlorine. All right. So it shows the limits. It says here 250 milligrams per liter, and then it has samples, and then it shows the different samples and so on. The point is that even though chlorination saves lives, too much chlorine can affect people's lives. So it's a technology that we think is safe, but there are limits to it for a reason. Why? Well, if you look at this meta-analysis of studies on individual consumption of chlorinated drinking water and bladder cancer, I chose a meta-analysis studies because that's where they look at hundreds of studies, okay, thousands in this case. So they look at different studies and they put all of the data together. And what does it say at the end here? It says, this meta-analysis of the best available epidemiological evidence indicates that long-term consumption of chlorinated drinking water is associated with bladder cancer, particularly in men. Okay? Particularly in men. The video has just come on. How do I mute this? Volume. There we go. I think that should work. Okay, so even though this technology has saved thousands and thousands of lives, there's still a cost. There's still a price to pay that people were not aware about in 1909. They knew that it saved lives, but now, when was this published? In 2005. They've done a study and realized that after all of that time, that it also might be causing cancer, bladder cancer in men. Okay, and there's many other studies that talk about it. Should we stop drinking chlorinated water? Possibly. I don't drink it anymore. I drink bottled water. Okay, or I buy a filter. Okay. But for those people who don't have access to those things, then drinking chlorinated water would be better because it's going to save their lives. But the point is, we now can see that people have learned from that example that they thought something was safe, and they've had to take many years in the future to realize that there are repercussions for the technology that they've employed. Okay, so we looked at two examples: smoking, chlorinated water. Let's go into another one. The article from National Geographic. All the sources I use are put at the top so you can question the sources and things like that. nationalgeographic.co.uk. Nights are getting brighter and Earth is paying the price. Because this is what they will say to you. Alright? They'll say to you, all my tech people will say to me, mobile phones are safe. We've been using them for a long time. The technology is benign. There's been thousands and thousands of studies that have said that they're safe. This is what they'll say to you. So 5G should be safe too. Okay? But look at this. So it says nights are getting brighter and Earth is paying the price. Electric lights have revolutionized our lives. But as illumination increases, the toll on wildlife and human health is becoming harder to ignore. So this is something that seems totally benign. Lights. Just normal lights. Not LED or anything, but just light and light pollution. And what does it say? It says, though it may not be as immediately toxic as a chemical spill, light pollution is now among the most chronic environmental perturbations on Earth. The most chronic environmental perturbations on Earth. Okay? Light pollution. Something that seems so benign that no one would have thought about this. But they're realizing that it's causing some major issues, not just with animals, but also with humans. Okay? It says in 2016, scientists estimated that 99% of the continental United States and Europe experienced some amount of light pollution. So what they'll say to you is that, listen, lights are fine. We've been using lights for ages, since what's his name? Edison. Thomas Edison and Latimer, the black scientist who actually worked on the filament, invented the light bulb. And the lighting is fine, it's safe. But only now in the 21st century, in the 20th century, do our scientists start to realize the impact that light is having, something that's totally benign. What's the impact? So for example, they say the scientists have found that the bulk of fatalities happen during spring and fall when artificial lights dramatically affect migratory birds, particularly those that travel overnight and are lured into urban environments by bright city lights. Okay? It's apparent that excess light kills millions of migrating birds each year. Millions of birds are killed each year just due to lights that everyone would think that they're benign. And it's not just lights. It has bats, insects, plants, fish, turtles, marine invertebrates including corals, and even primates. Our thirst for light is claiming lives. And I want you to understand this. This is what the 5G will tell me. 5 years. They're going to tell me I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. Why? Because it's been proven safe. It's been used for years and years. It's benign. Just like lights. Okay? Just like they thought cigarettes were at one time. Just like chlorine, which has saved so many lives, but now we also know that it causes cancer. Should we not be informed? And should we not consider the possibilities? Or should we walk into another environmental issue just because of some commercial interests and more nefarious interests, which we're going to find out about? I'm very passionate about this subject. Why? Because as I said in the earlier presentation, it's about the global commons and people who want to co-opt the ownership of the global commons and pollute it unfairly for others. Let's keep going. So it's not just birds that are affected by lights, it's also affecting humans. I know this for a fact because in the UK they rolled out municipal programs of LED lighting. Okay? And they shine right in the windows. Why? Because I don't have, I'm not a wealthy person, so I live in a dense community with the lights right outside the windows, right outside my child's window. And it says it here. It says that from the University of Connecticut, just trying to get my cursor to show up, Richard Stephen, who has studied the links between light pollution and human health for decades, what we need is a longer period of physiological nighttime. Why? So he goes on, he talks about its importance for people to generate the melatonin. It normally begins rising at sundown, okay, and peaks around midnight. You can go and read the article for yourself. And he says that down the bottom, it's going to disrupt the circadian rhythm, okay, and it's going to make you have low melatonin levels, meaning you're not going to sleep properly. Okay, which means it's going to have other add-on health impacts just from that light that you would have never thought about. You would have never thought would have affected you. It affects you so much that in this country, okay, on this little slide I didn't put the actual thing, but the UK government has, look, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, they have guidance on light pollution, and it's a long page where they talk about advice on how to consider light and make sure it's not harmful. This is something that's totally benign. So don't tell me we shouldn't be concerned about a new technology that's never been tested, that uses forms of radiation at spectrum that's never been put into the public domain. We should just accept it. What about smoking? What about chlorine? What about light? Something so benign. Let's finish with this one. Plastics. Now we all know plastics. Okay, I'm an environmental scientist. I'm a chemist. We all know plastics are not good for the environment because they don't degrade. Okay? But for years and years, people have been using plastics, and the only concern that people really had with plastics were that first it was they were going to fill up landfills, and also that they use non-renewable resources you need non-renewable resources to manufacture the plastics. Okay, those were the main concerns. Then people started to realize that, okay, hold on, we also need to be concerned about plastics, because we're doing a lot of heating of these plastics in our microwaves, as well as carrying them around in our bottles, and the plastic could be leaching. The chemicals from the plastic could be leaching into the plastic. So the concern level moved on. But no one envisioned the calamity of microplastics. What are we talking about, microplastics? Microplastics here, as it says, are those that are plastic debris that are less than 5 millimeters in length, or about the size of a sesame seed. Okay, so less than 5 millimeters. Some of them are even smaller than that. No one realized that microplastics were going to impact our environment. But you know why? Because they're so small, you couldn't see it. Microplastics come from a variety of sources. Okay, these tiny particles easily pass through water filtration systems and end up in the ocean and Great Lakes, posing a potential threat to aquatic life. All right, and even here, if you look, it says microbeads are tiny pieces of polyethylene plastic added to health and beauty products, such as some cleansers and toothpaste. They've been putting plastics into the cosmetics and into things that we even ingest, like toothpaste. Why? They weren't trying to harm us. Okay, all of the governmental agencies have regulations up for it, but they didn't predict that these plastics would impact the environment the way they are. These microplastics, which are so small, they're not only ending up in just in the environment, in circulation in the environment, in the ocean and rivers, but they're also ending up in aquatic life inside, which we then go and eat. Even when you wash your clothes, something like this, which is probably made from cotton and a bit of neon or rayon, or not neon, sorry, nylon or rayon or some sort of synthetic material. When we wash these clothes, it breaks down and there's microplastic fibers that are ending up into the sewer systems, which are then ending up into the rivers and the lakes. Who could have predicted that? No one. Look, December 28, 2015, President Obama signed the Microbead Free Water Act of 2015, banning plastic microbeads in cosmetic and personal care. Okay? This was in 2015. How long have plastics been around? It says here, microbeads are not a recent problem. According to United Nations Environment Program, plastic microbeads first appeared in personal care products about 50 years ago. But it's only in 2015 that President Obama in the US, forget the other countries, has signed the Microbead Free Waters Act of 2015. 50 years of plastics going in. No one would have known the impact. But they're going to tell you and tell me that we shouldn't worry about 5G. Why? Because cell phones and mobile phones have been in use for so long and everything is fine. You shouldn't question it. How dare they? As if we could have predicted that smoking would have been cool and healthy at one point, and then now everyone knows the impact of smoking, you know, and secondhand smoke and so on, and things are still being discovered about it. Chlorine. And now people know the impacts of chlorine and things are still being discovered about it. Light. Plastics. That's the basis of what we need to understand. Question everything and don't let them make you feel as if you shouldn't be questioning. Let's keep moving on with my presentation. Why is this important? You are just a commodity, and I'm going to prove this. This is not just words. I'm going to prove that you, me, we are just commodities to many people. Okay? There's something called corporate social responsibility. Why? Because there are irresponsible people out there in corporations. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about your children, your children's children. you are just a commodity to them. And they want you to think that everything that they do, every service they offer, every technology they offer is benign and is safe. Why? Because the government says so. Because this study says so. This guideline says so. Doesn't matter what impact you think it has, even if it's an aesthetic impact, like the light. They don't care about that. They just want you as a consumer of their product. And we need to make sure that we're not doing that. And in the world of, in the day of the internet, it's good because now we can communicate to each other, and they don't like that, especially when you have somebody that's informed. That's why I'm coming at 5G from a totally different perspective, and you'll see. Okay, let's keep going on. So what is 5G for the people? Many people will know what 5G is. Excuse me for those people that don't, but this is for the, I'm sorry, for the people that do, but this is for those people that don't. Okay, just get a bit of water. So what's 5G? Okay, well, if you're not old enough to know, you can go back and look at the internet. You have 1G. It stands for, G stands for generation. Okay, so first generation devices, things like the big chunky phones. Okay, analog technology, meaning it wasn't digital. Okay, didn't have any bandwidth, meaning there was no data that could be sent. All right, 2G, or no digital data, that is. 2G phones, all right, it started to become more digital. This is about 1991. 3G now, okay, so you're getting different apps that you can use now on the phone. You can do things like send pictures. You can do things like take videos and send videos, surf the internet, things like that. 3G phones. That's not too long ago, is it? 2001. Okay, and then you have the 4G, which is the dimension that we're in now, the fourth generation. This says here about 2010 and has the different standards. Okay, digital technology, mobile broadband. Okay, broadband meaning how much data that you can the band is wide, so you can send more data, you can upload more data, you can download more data. Okay, so that's what 1G to 4G is. But what's 5G? Well, 5G stands for fifth generation technology. So this is from, and I'm using sources that you can go and research yourself. This is from the European Union plan on 5G. Okay, because this thing goes way beyond you and me. So let's really look. So what do they say about 5G in their plan? The 5G master plan for the European Union. It says 5G is the fifth generation of telecommunication systems, and it will be one of the most critical building blocks of our digital economy and society. Okay, in the next decade, Europe has taken significant steps to lead global developments towards this strategic technology. Okay, this last two words are hugely important. 5G is a strategic technology. For who? We're going to find out. What strategy are they talking about? Okay, what strategies are they talking about? Remember, this is the European Union as a body talking about 5G is a strategic technology. It's not an app that someone made. It's not a technology that was just invented off the cuff, you know, and people happen to like it. It's the fifth generation of telecommunication systems that will be one of the most critical building blocks of their digital economy and society in the next decade, and is part of their strategic technology. Okay, so that's what 5G is. Now let's get into the technical side, and apologies for people that might not understand it, but I'm going to try to dumb it down a bit. Thank you again to all those people that are watching. All right, and I need you to bear with me because I have a lot of information, but in order to really say what I need to say, I have to make sure that I put it and I connect it up for you. Okay, so what's 5G? So we said it's the 5th generation, okay, of a strategic technology. In 5G, you have different bands, all right? You have the low band, the mid band, the high band of 5G. Right now, we're kind of in the mid band of 5G. And if you look at the bottom paragraph, it gives a summary. It says, in quick summary, the bands work as follows in the real world. One low band, 600 to 700 megahertz. The 700 megahertz, by the way, is what you will hear people say. Okay, the experts, will come in and say, oh, 5G is just going to use the same signal, the same frequency that the digital television is using. That's on the 700 megahertz, which has been freed up in Europe. I'm not sure in other places, but in Europe, that's been freed up for 5G to work on. That's in the low band. It doesn't have much bandwidth for 5G, that is. Compared to 4G, it does. Okay, so one low band tower can cover hundreds of square miles with 5G service that ranges in speed from 30 to 250 megabits per second. Okay, so we see on the chart here, for 3G phones, it was 42 megabits per second. With the low band, you're going right up to 250 megabits per second, because as you see on my screen, 5G is all about speed. That's the whole point. It's high upload and high download speed. All right. So that's the low band. A mid band 2.5 to 3.5 gigahertz tower covers a several mile radius with 5G that currently ranges from 100 to 900 megabits per second. Okay, so that's going up even further. Okay, this one says 4G LTE is going up to about 2,000 megabits per second. Okay, and so right now for the LTE systems that you have in the States, that you have in the UK for 5G, because the 5G coverage is not here yet for most people. If you turn on your phone and you look up at that little symbol, it's going to say 4G. It's not going to say 5G. If you scan the networks, it's going to say 4G. Okay? But for some people in some areas, they are getting 4G LTE. Okay? So that's the mid band that they're getting. All right. This last band, by the way, when we talk about the frequency, the 600 to 700 megahertz, the lower the frequency, the further it can travel, and the more things it can travel through. Okay, so radio waves, which we used to use the old radios, they could travel quite far. When I was living in Bermuda, I could hear BBC, World Service. That was doing radio waves at very low frequency radio waves. They can travel very far. Okay, have long penetrating power. But you need a lot of power to pump it out there. Okay, but as you go up the bandwidth, as you can see, the 600 to 700 megahertz, as you go up the frequency, they can travel not as far. Okay, so they have more bandwidth, but they can't travel as far. The high band, the last band, which is the millimeter wave, this is the ultimate in 5G technology that they would like to develop. The millimeter wave technology. This is what I'm basing my presentation on, the millimeter wave technology. Okay, this high band tower can cover a 1 mile or lower radius while delivering 1 to 3 gigabytes. So we're going from megabytes up to gigabytes per second speed. Okay, so that's the technical breakdown of 5G. It's all about the speed. So here's a video from SoftBank, which used to be Vodafone in Japan. Okay, and they're talking about 5G. It's a quite old video, in fact. And here is a little clip, or a little graph of what they're talking about. UEs are user equipment. That's what UE is. And it's saying that they all try to download this file, a 1 megabyte file, during 10 seconds simultaneously. So they were all trying to download a file. Okay, and you had some of them were going to use the 2G, some of you is going to use 3G, some are going to use 4G, and some of them are going to use 5G. And you're going to see that with the 5G signal, that 100 of the people were able to successfully download the file. Okay, whereas with the other bandwidths, they had a much lower success rate. Okay, because 5G is all about speed. So let's take a quick watch.
2016年9月2日人口密集地でのダウンロード速度計測各キャリアのスマホを使用しそれぞれ100台で一斉にファイルのダウンロードを実施まずは A 社制限時間
So this is the first group trying to download the file. It's a 1 megabyte file.
10秒内に花火が表示されたものは成功フラッグを掲げ研究員に成功を知らせるダウンロードが間に合わなかったものは黒いフラッグを掲げる
So only 34 people out of the 100 were able to download the file, okay, in 10 seconds. Ten seconds is up, and using the higher bandwidth, 49 people were able to do it. And of course, now with the 5G technology, so what it's showing is that in 10 seconds 100 people were able simultaneously to download this file. Okay, 5G is all about speed. So that was using the mid-band, okay, the mid-band, the LTE, 4G LTE. The ultimate in 5G is the millimeter wave technology. Okay, that will allow the fastest speeds. Okay, but as I said, the rollout of millimeter wave technology is very, very sparse. It's only being trialed in a very, very small amount of locations. If you have 5G, if you're in the States or if you happen to be some places in the UK, it's most likely the 4G LTE, which some people are calling 5G. Okay. So, but I want you to remember, it's all about speed. And what do you need to get the maximum speed? They need the millimeter wave technology. Okay, good. So let's keep moving on. So in short, the G stands for generation. 5G is the collective term for the 5th generation of mobile network technology. LTE stands for long-term evolution. Okay, and it's 4G technology. The newer 5G is not a replacement for 4G. So you'll find at this moment LTE and 5G technology working together for the foreseeable future. Very important what they're saying right there. Okay, what they're calling 5G right now is really just 4G LTE, long-term evolution. Okay, and the 5G technology is slowly being introduced. Why? You're going to find out the reasons why a bit later. But the millimeter wave technology, as you can see over here, a diagram of the electromagnetic spectrum. This was the 2G frequency we talked about earlier. Then the 3G frequency is getting closer together. Okay, the waves are getting close together, higher frequency. Then this is the 4G. The millimeter band starts here. Okay, not millimeter, 10 millimeter, 100 millimeter, meaning 1 millimeter band. Okay, so we're talking about up to 60 gigahertz. Okay, up to 60 gigahertz, from 30 to 60 gigahertz. That's the true 5G that people are looking to do. All right, so we need to understand that. Now, as I said, 5G is all about speed, and I just showed you that. Okay, but in order to get that speed, there are some trade-offs, and I put here in red. Without millimeter wave, the very top speeds will not be possible. So we're looking to the future now. This is a very important point. Okay, if you missed the beginning of the presentation, I talked about how we have to look to the future. We cannot look just on what's being presented today. And I talked about cigarettes, I talked about light, I talked about chlorine in the water, I talked about plastics, and how over time, over the evolution of those technologies, harm has been shown to happen. Okay, that people weren't first knowledgeable about. The same with 5G. We're talking about millimeter wave technology going forth. It's not developed yet, or it is developed, but it's not rolled out yet because there's some things that they need. Okay, so if you look here, okay, you can see this says the existing mobile has the large cell towers, what we're used to. Okay, and as you go over, it says existing mobile spectrum into the now new spectrum, the LTE. Now you're talking about what they call small cells. Small cells. But really, the evolution of 5G will be in the millimeter wave bandwidth. Okay, frequency. And you'll see here, you don't just have macro and small cells, you have all small cells in a high density configuration. This is very important. So, let's read very quickly. The small red tier at the very top of the cake represents high band millimeter wave, 5G. It's super fast but very short distance towers that will be deployed in dense urban environments and public gathering places that frequently serve huge numbers of people, such as sporting and concert stadiums, convention centers, and the like. Okay? At one point, some carriers suggested that millimeter wave 5G would be the only true 5G solution, but the past year has conclusively demonstrated that millimeter wave small cells are not going to be deployed as widely as was originally hoped. So what they're saying here is that right now they're using 5G or 4G LTE as a 5G solution. Why? Because they're coming up with a lot of hiccups in terms of having this distribution of small cells. But in order for the 5G that they really want, the millimeter wave, the very top speeds, they have to move to this model that they talked about, which will be very short distance towers deployed in dense urban environments. Now tell me, who lives in dense urban environments, family? The poor. The people that aren't wealthy, the people that don't have driveways to drive right up to their homes and huge estates and stuff like that, so on and so on. Okay? It says, oh, they will be in dense urban environments and public gathering places that frequently serve huge numbers of people. Yes, you're going to have those little places where people go to a sporting event or to some sort of convention center and they're able to leave. But you're going to have others that live in these dense urban environments, and they're going to be surrounded in the future. Now we're talking about the future with these small cells that have to be very close together. Okay, emitting millimeter wave bandwidth. Okay, at 60 gigahertz, 30 to 60 gigahertz. Okay, this has not been done anywhere right now. This is what the people that will be the proponents of 5G will say. Mobile phones have been in use for a long time. Cell phone towers have been proven to not be harmful. Okay, and so multiple studies have been done and everything's fine. But what we're talking about, the technology of 5G for the future, has never been done before. It's not in existence. There are no long-term models to follow. So we have to not let them try to fool you and say, oh yes, this is all the same as the current mobile technology. It's not. It's different. It's different in terms of the density of the cells that they want to distribute and put up. It's different in terms of the type of cells that they will put up. Okay, and it's different in terms of the handsets that can cope with the data. So we have to look at the future. Okay. So 5G. I think I put that slide out of place. Yeah, that one's out of place. this is what I want to talk about. So we're still in the technical side of 5G. We're going to talk about MIMO. And in this case, I got my cousin on here. I can see Paul Ferret, who is in the field, and we were having a discussion about this. And my cousin Paul was saying, he was adamant, he was saying, listen, Chapman, brother David, Roots, multiple input, multiple output, or MIMO systems have been around and been used. And he is totally correct on that. Okay, because as he was saying, and as you do the research, it just means having more than one input and output aspect or antenna for either your device or your router, or even for the transmission lines. That's what MIMO is all about. Okay, but with the 5G, the system that they're talking about what's called massive MIMO. Okay. Let's read what it says. It says, because 5G is an umbrella term that covers a lot of different technologies, it's difficult to separate everything neatly without overlap. The higher speeds that really set 5G apart from any of the 4G LTE flavors require millimeter wave high frequency bands. Okay, so we're not talking about 4G LTE and the MIMO that's done with that. Okay, we're talking about the future, the millimeter wave high frequency band, the high density small cell units that will have to be distributed very close together, and the MIMO networks that will do that. It says making this work efficiently depends on massive MIMO, okay, multiple input, multiple output, and beam forming. While 4G base stations might typically have 12 antennas to transmit and receive data, thanks to massive MIMO, 5G base stations might support 100 antennas. The thing about these higher millimeter wave frequencies is that they are much easier to block, and multiple antennas can lead to greater interference. Beam forming is employed to identify the optimum route to each connected user, which helps to reduce interference and boost the chances of easily blocked signals reaching their intended recipients. Okay, so I want you to put all of this together and think that, as I said, we're talking about the future. We're not talking about 3G. We're not talking about 4G. We're not talking about 4G LTE, which some people are calling 5G. We're talking about millimeter wave high frequency bands from 30 to 60 gigawatts. Gigahertz. Okay, 30 to 60 gigahertz. They don't travel far, these waves, but they have lots of bandwidth. So they need lots of high density small cells. And to support those small cells, they're going to have mobile base stations that with massive MIMO, meaning lots of antennas around them. Okay? And they're going to be primarily needed in those places where there are dense urban environments. This is what we're talking about. This is where the inequity is going to appear. As I said at the beginning of this, the environmental justice. What it will look like for you in your neighborhood will be different than someone else in their neighborhood. And the exposure to radiation will be different to you in your neighborhood, if you happen to be in that neighborhood, compared to somebody else who doesn't live in that neighborhood. You cannot blanket the statement and say, oh, it's all going to be the same, and the technology is all equitably going to affect everyone in the same way. It's not. Massive MIMO antennas increase sector throughput, and I apologize for some of the technical things, but you need to know this. Okay, we need to know the basis of it. I'll skip over some of the stuff that wasn't that's not needed. Okay, so they talk about massive MIMO antennas, which I just explained about it. Okay, but look, this is the important part here. Of more than 562 separate 5G demonstrations, tests or trials globally of 5G technologies, at least 94 of them have involved testing massive MIMO in the context of 5G. In other words, they're saying that the majority going forward, the technology they're looking to put in place will involve this massive MIMO construct of the base stations, as well as the high density closely distributed small cells. Small cells are low-powered cellular radio access nodes that operate in licensed and unlicensed spectra that have a range of 10 meters to a few kilometers. Small cells are critical to 5G networks, as 5G radio waves can't travel long distance because of 5G's higher frequencies. I hope family is getting what I'm saying. Okay, so let's have a diagram to kind of break it down. This you can read the text on your own. You can freeze it when I post the video. Okay, but I'll just explain what's going on. The lines in this figure at the top represent what they're calling cells or sectors. Okay, sectors. And of course the devices, the UEs, the user equipment, are mobile phones or tablets or whatever. Okay, so this is an old setup. This is a MIMO setup here. Okay, and these will be solitary base stations. This is the old setup where each phone has to talk to individual transmission points. That's the old setup that they're trying to move away from. As we move down to this setup here, this is the ideal setup that they're talking about. This one here. Okay, so this is what they're calling them, the sort of like the setup I was just talking about, the massive MIMO network in a user-centric way. So if you have to look here. So here's the main CPU. Okay, so the main server for the companies and like whatever mobile phone company. Okay, and then you would have these small cells which are distributed out. Okay, single antennas, and then you would have massive MIMO located in different points. But the thing about this one is you can see there are no sectors. So each phone, this is where the speed comes from, can talk to this one, it can talk to that one, it can talk to all of these at the same time, and the CPU is responsible for organizing and allocating the different data and stuff like that. Okay, this is what they're hoping to accomplish here, but this can only be fully accomplished at the maximum way they want to look. They want to do it with the high speed that we talked about using millimeter wave technology. Okay, because that's going to give you the data, that's going to give you the bandwidth that you need. And the bandwidth is going to give you the speed that you need in order to get that. But in order to get that speed and that bandwidth, the millimeter wave doesn't travel far. So you have to see they have them very closely linked together. Okay, so now that I've established that, what does it look like? Let's get to the nitty-gritty, family. Okay, thank you for those people that have held on. Please give me a thumbs up from time to time. Let me know that you're watching. Okay, let me know that the information is coming clear. Add a question in if you want as well, if you need to. Okay, what does it look like? I just went out today. I traveled into London today. I just drove. I felt like going for a drive. Okay, when you look online, as I said, O2, this is in the UK, launches 5G network in 6 UK cities. Anybody that tells you 5G is all over the place, they're wrong. Okay, they're lying. They don't know what they're talking about. It's limited right now, and most of it is what they're calling 4G LTE, which is people calling 5G. Okay, remember the small cells? I took this picture today. You see these on every other light post. These little cells here. Okay, and what you have in the rest of the city, not the city, in this area, this is in King's Cross, by the way, because it said in the article, O2 said that the network will initially switch on where it's needed most, including busy footfall areas around London Waterloo and King's Cross, and it talks about some other areas. So I drove down to King's Cross to take a look around. I drove down there, all right, to see what the 5G network looked like, and I took my meter with me and everything, so on and so on. Okay, because I'm interested in this. And you could see all these small cells on the different lampposts. And when I take my meter up to them, they give off a reading, just like a mobile phone. I didn't get that close because they're not very high off the ground either. Okay, I couldn't touch it obviously, but you can see the street lamp here. Okay, and you can see what's that behind it. There's a bit of delay on the comments, but what's that behind it? Residences. Okay, council residences. You know. So for people in these dense networks, in these dense urban environments, and this is a good example, but this is what life will increasingly look like for people in the urban environments, whether it's in a city environment or suburb environment like where I live. What does it look like? What are we looking for when we look for 5G? This gentleman, you can find him on Twitter, Peter Clark. He's a young man who's very interested in mobile phone technology. I don't know him personally, I'm just doing my research. And he's kind of like a savant within the broadcasting world. Okay, he just goes around and takes pictures of 5G technology, of broadcasting technology, and he will explain it. Okay, and he's set up here O2 UK Nokia 5G site. And he said this is the architecture, okay, and so this is what these antennas consist of both 5G and 4G equipment, okay, 5G and 4G equipment. So this is the massive MIMO. This is an example of what they're talking about. Okay, so this is obviously at the very tall towers. So here he's going to talk about his tower. So please bear with the video.
Today I'm in Marfleet, an area in the southeast of Hull, East Yorkshire, and I'll be talking about the mast which is behind me, which is an EE 5G site. At approximately 25 metres, this tower is quite tall by UK standards. However, we're more interested.
Why are we watching this? Because we need to know what these things are going to be looking like. Okay, as he just said, this is quite tall by UK standards. So just keep listening to him.
In the antennas and equipment which is mounted at the top of the mast. This mast's head frame is quite busy, so I'm going to work through it step by step kind of thing. So there are two sets of antennas here. So on the left and third from left are Huawei AOC 4518 R8 V06 antennas. These have an awful lot of ports, as you'll be able to see from the bottom of there and from the amount of feeders going in there. So these antennas carry EE's 44R L80, both carries 1667 and 1811, and L21, and alongside that they're L26 in 2T4R.
Did you see what his screens showed? See? LTE. Okay? So this isn't the millimeter wave technology. This is the LTE technology. Okay? So this isn't quite the millimeter wave yet that they've been launched out. Alright? Hence why the tower can be so tall. So let's keep listening.
21, and alongside that they're L26 in 2T4R. As the mast has both of EE's L26 carriers, this has 80 MHz paired of LTE spectrum deployed for EE, 45 MHz of it in 44R. In fact, it has so much spectrum deployed, I've been getting 300 megabits per second in various carrier combinations, because unfortunately my device isn't sufficient to be able to fully take advantage of all this site has to offer in turn.
Listen carefully. I hope the family is listening. As he said, okay, he said, first of all, it's all about speed and how much his uploads and downloads. But he says that his device is not equipped to actually take advantage of the data and the speed that is really coming out of the towers, okay, out of the mobile masts. And I'm going to talk about that a bit later on. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. Not only will the distribution change of the architecture of the mobile phone transmission network that will change, they're hoping for it to change, but also the devices that you're going to hold, that people are going to need, those also will be changing. So how could anybody who's in the mobile industry, in the tech industry, say to you that, oh, the paradigm that's already been established under normal mobile phones now, how could the paradigm that's been established be the same when everything else is changing around it? Okay, it's very important to understand that we're not dealing, and this is just LTE. Imagine when we move to the millimeter wave technology that they're hoping to develop. All right, so I'm not gonna, you can go back and watch his video on your own, okay, but this is what it looks like. All right, however,
today
people are being deceptive. Okay, so if you see this little article here, it says not so paltry towers. Vodafone gears up to flog off massive mass business. Vodafone is looking to flog off its towers in the next 18 months. This is April 30th, 2020. The mobile operator revealed its first quarter results, so on and so on. Vodafone is looking to actually move away from the large tower systems that we currently know about and recognize as mobile phone masts. Okay? Why? Because that way of looking at of using technology to broadcast information for cell phones is quickly evolving and moving away from. They don't need those big towers and need to rent out rooftops and all of that stuff anymore. Okay? And not only that, look at this video.
Going for a walk, and we stumbled upon this place. In the middle, there's like some platform over there. Don't know what that is, but it's like probably like some park care. But the crazy thing is this tree right here.
So they're walking in the forest, okay? And they're taking videos. Remember, it's lockdown, so people are trying to get some exercise. They're walking in the forest, they're taking videos, and they see this tree. So they're going to talk about this tree.
This tree right here. Have you seen it? That ain't a tree. That's a 5G tower. So mixed in between all them branches, if you can see right in the middle, the antenna.
So the same thing, the same structure that we saw here, okay, in this video.
Today I'm in Marfleet, an area.
Trying to deal with this. The same structure that we saw in that video, they've put also in this area, but they've disguised it as a tree. Okay, they've disguised it as a tree family. Yes, so these companies are trying to hide now. They're moving away from the large, massive masts. They don't want them anymore, and where they have to have them, they're disguising them. Even in my neighborhood, people will tell you that you're starting to see these pop up. These cylinders, they're just popping up, okay? All over the place, they're popping up. And somebody told me, because I took a picture and I took my meter over to measure it, okay? And somebody said to me, somebody that's in the industry said, no, he doesn't think that there's a 5G towers or so on and so on, okay? But if you go to this article here that talks about it, hopefully it opens up. got a lot of things going on my computer right now, so no, we don't want notifications. Okay, so if you look at this here, it says dozens of new, taller and wider 65-foot mobile phone masts needed across Birmingham. Okay, and you can see here's the mast, very similar to the one that I had in my presentation. All right, and if you read it, it says Birmingham will need dozens of new 65-foot tall phone masts to create the 5G network, which has been described as a game changer by mobile bosses. Okay, so family, you see this? This isn't Birmingham. This is Croydon, where I live. This is Croydon. The same thing. They're popping up everywhere. This doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like that. Okay?
Today
This looks like that, but they've hidden it. They've made it look like a tree. Now they're doing this design here. Okay? Yeah? What are they trying to hide? Why are they trying to hide this 5G stuff? Okay? Read it. Let's read why they're trying to hide them. It says the taller and wider monopoles, that's what that is, will replace the current structures around the city lasting for 20 years, with residents assured there won't be one on every street. You're not going to see one of those on every street. Why? Because you're going to have those as the base stations, and then you're going to have the small cells which go out into the streets in the future for the millimeter wave technology. All right? But what the question is, why are they hiding it? Let's keep looking. It says 5G is the next generation of mobile technology, promising speeds 10 times faster than the current 4G, as well as the potential for wider interconnectivity, including autonomous vehicles and even smart lampposts. Here, he says it here. The Mobile Broadband Network Limited, the amalgamation of EE and 3's infrastructure arms, stated it was hoping to avoid an adversarial planning process with local authorities such as Birmingham City. The firm is looking to replace its antennae network in the city with as little fuss as possible. Okay? With as little fuss as possible. They currently have around 145 existing sites, many of which are on rooftops, while there are about 38 street works such as fern masts. There won't be one in every street, okay, he says. Once we've built the 5G network, we would then understand where the demand is, where the capacity is not being met, and we can then look to supplement that, meaning they're going to put in those, and then they're going to put in the small cells where the demand is. All right? But what about the planning process that he talked about? Is this here. He says, the monopole is the only current solution for street-based equipment. Mr. Osborne said, we want to move away from an adversarial planning process, which has happened before, where we submit applications and is considered by planning officers. We would rather work with them because this is going to be a utility which is expected by every resident in the country, and if people don't have the coverage, they're going to be disadvantaged. But basically what they're trying to say here, okay, is this. They want to move away from an adversarial planning process. In other words, he's trying to say they don't want people to protest against these things. They don't want people to see them. They don't want people to recognize them for what they really are, which are mobile phone masts. That's what he's trying to say. They don't want them to look like this anymore. Okay? So they've tried to hide them. They've tried to hide them so that they look like a tree, and now they realize that's not working, so they're going to move them to this monopole. Okay? So we need to realize that we're being set up. That's what I'm trying to say. We're being set up, and it's insidious, meaning you're going to see these things being rolled out, but you're not going to know. Why? Because the planning process that they're going to put in place it's going to be designed so that you do not have to worry, that you do not notice. And I have proof of this. Okay, these are actual signs from those poles, because I've gone around and I see them all over. And you can see this, it says the same network 3 and EE that we just read about. This is a voluntary consultation notice. All right, voluntary. So the network companies don't even have to do this, they're saying, basically. It's voluntary. And it says the notice advises you of the proposed development. What proposed development? The installation of a 20-meter pole and associated telecommunications development in close proximity to this existing telecommunications site. Okay? And it says, should you wish to find out more details of the proposal, please make contact as below within 14 days of this site notice being in place. The notice was so small wrapped around the pole. Nobody noticed. Nobody would even know that it's a notice, or that pole is to do with a mobile phone mast. And it says this notice does not refer to a formal planning application. Why? Because they don't have to do all of that. They don't have to do that anymore. They're being accommodated by the councils and by the government to install these 5G networks underneath the noses of residents. And they have to do it underneath the noses because they know people will try to complain. This is another notice. This was on this one. And it says notice required pursuant to paragraph 18 of schedule, I think it's 2 to the Telecommunications Act 1984. Okay, same thing down here. What that is this, that part of the act tells people how to object. Okay, so you can see here they put the notice up. They haven't put any name, any number. They haven't put who was when it was installed on. So even if you wanted to protest, you don't have enough information. They're trying to deceive people. This is just in the UK, but I would suspect that in other places the same thing is happening. The same deceptive ability, the same deceptive strategy is happening. Okay? And we need to understand why. So, I've established so far, okay, for those people that have just joined me, I've established so far why we should be concerned about 5G. Because we're talking about a future technology and a future deployment of technology that has never been done before. The technology is not the same as existing mobile phone technology. The base stations, the mobile towers are not the same as what is existing before. Okay, and the distribution network is not going to be the same, and the handsets are not going to be the same. I've talked about that so far. Okay, and I've showed in the beginning of the presentation how history has shown us that things that we thought were benign technology, like chlorine, like smoking, like lighting and plastic, all over time, after decades and decades of people thinking they were fine, people realized that there were concerns with those things. Okay, and this is why we need to examine critically 5G. But let's look more deeply at some of the concerns. Okay, thank you for those people that are still with me. Some people have probably tuned out, which is fine. This is a long presentation. Okay, and I'm thankful for those people who are still with me. If you give me a thumbs up, it would be helpful. Let me know you're still there. If you have any questions, okay. So we're going to get to the part 2, and then we're going to wrap it up of my presentation. Okay, the concerns now. So, before we talk about the concerns, this is where people are going to tell me, I started off the presentation where people were telling me that, you know, oh, go put in your tinfoil hat. Okay? In other words, basically discounting my concern, discounting the credibility of the possibility that things might not be as they seem. Okay? So before we get into the concerns, I'm going to break down why there's a basis for us to be concerned. First of all, outside of the physical way things look and stuff like that with the technology, we need to understand that as a human, as a living organism, we are bioelectric organisms. I'm not making that up. I'm not trying to be kooky, okay? As I put, people call you a kook. I'm giving you scientific fact, okay? That we are bioelectric and biomagnetic organisms. And I put something on the here from Wikipedia. There's even a journal that talks about bioelectromagnetics, an academic journal that's filled with the bioelectromagnetic physiology of not just humans but of other living things, including animals, multicellular organisms, and unicellular organisms. Okay, so this isn't just made up stuff. All right, and if you look on the right here, it will show that different organs and different parts of our body have what's called action potentials. Okay, so at the top are those things that are registering a voltage, meaning a difference in potential, meaning an electrical system, to put it simply. Okay, and as you go down, they become less polar. Okay, or less. There's a less of an action potential, and I think I cut off what the actual diagram was saying, the label of it, okay? But basically what it's saying is that for the more specialized the part of the body, the higher the action potential in millivolts, okay? So looking down here, we have the embryonic stem cells, which are stem cells can develop into many other types of cells, all right? Then we have adult stem cells. They do not have as high of an action potential as some of the more specialized cells. Skeletal muscle, the neurons, kidney tubules, so on and so on. Okay? So which means that they can be affected and they rely on electrophysiology in order to work. Okay? So we are bioelectric organisms, and scientists are far from understanding the real complexities of us and nature in general as bioelectric organisms. Okay, you can also look at something called Kirlian photography. Now, trust me, family, I know what I'm talking about. Kirlian photography is used to debunk many people that are talking about auras. Okay, people that they say Kirlian photography is about can be evidence of people having an aura. All right, I'm not talking about auras and spiritual things and souls and all of that. I'm talking about Kirlian photography for what it actually is. How does it happen? Kirlian photography can happen with living and non-living things. Okay, why? What happens is that if you send a voltage through an object, okay, it can discharge a corona. Okay, meaning light. Why? Because the electrons get excited and it can discharge light. And that light can be used, just like light on a photographic paper, can be used to take a photograph. And you can see that discharge. Okay? And it will say here that, as you can see, it can happen with non-living things like this penny and the living things. And a lot of people have said that, oh, this was about, people being able to see the aura of people, okay? And what they've done in the scientists have shown that really the discharge is really about, for humans, it comes about from things that can conduct, like water, like in this case the metal of the coins, okay? So what I'm showing there is that the human body is full of things that have polarity, okay? Meaning a difference in charge from one side to the other, like water, okay? Like minerals, so on and so on. So we are bioelectric organisms. And the extent of which electrical fields affect us is still being understood. All right? So now that I've established that, we need to look at some of the concerns. All right? Now, I need to break down this part very carefully. Okay. These concerns, the first concerns, relate to the increase in exposure to electromagnetic radiation. There's a large bank of people that are concerned about the increase in exposure from the cell phone, the mobile phone radiation, from the mobile phone radiation from the cell towers, things like that. Okay. Now this is the part where I need to fix that. This is the part where those people that are in the industry will say that mobile phones are safe, that the studies, mobile phones as well as mobile phone transmission towers, okay, towers are safe. They will say that all of the studies, that hundreds and hundreds of studies, major studies have been done that have shown that there are no concerns with the use of mobile phone technology. Okay, people have been using them for years, so on and so on and so on. They're going to say that the mobile phone towers they emit very low amounts of radiation, okay, electromagnetic radiation, and they're also going to say that the limits that are set by the governmental regulatory bodies are designed so that they're even lower than what is deemed safe. Okay, so the government might have a standard where they found that something can be unsafe, so they will set the actual limit at 100 times lower than that, okay, or 1,000 times lower than that, okay, and that even then the power or the exposure to radiation that you will encounter will still be lower than that. Okay, so this is what they're going to say, and this is what a lot of the information in the literature will attempt to also reaffirm. Okay, and this is the justification for saying 5G should be okay. Okay, now I've already established, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, that what we know as 5G in the future will not be the same as 4G LTE now, or 4G or 3G or 700 megahertz, aka digital television, okay, or radio waves or FM. It will not be the same in the future. Okay, so what I've done here, I've put all the information on all these slides for you to go and watch. I've put the links, I've put the title of the YouTube, okay, and I put the YouTube here. Obviously you cannot click it, but I can click it if I wanted to. You can go back and watch, but I've just give a summary, okay, that despite all of those assurances from the people in the industry, there are still major concerns with the use of electromagnetic radiation, okay, and we need to understand that the technology that's going forward is going to be different. So I'm going to go through very quickly what the concerns are, because we need to understand that if these concerns are there for the old technology, the 4G technology, the 4G LTE, and there are concerns by people that are experts in the field, okay, then we need to also be aware that there may be impacts from the future 5G millimeter wave technology that we do not understand yet. Because in mobile phone technology, here in this video here is Wi-Fi safe in schools. where Daphne Takova, she's well known out there as a protester in terms of Wi-Fi and wireless technology, the video, okay? She gives lots of information. And what does she say in her testimony here? She says that radiation is linked to sperm defects from mobile phone in the pockets of men. There's links from EMF to EMF and autism and ADHD. There's links between cell phone radiation and cancer in laboratory tests. The most recent, of course, that most people talk about is the NTP, National Toxicology Program in the United States. We're going to talk about that. That the proximity of exposure to cell towers and neurological problems, that there's a link between proximity of exposure to cell towers and neurological problems. That the modulation in cell phones and Wi-Fi signaling is totally different than many of the tests that are done to test the limits for mobile phone technology, meaning they don't exactly imitate and mimic the way that the signals come out in mobile phones and in mobile phone towers. So they're not able to see directly the same impacts that will come from the use of mobile phones and mobile phone towers. Okay? And that these things can cause sickness like headaches, nosebleeds, tingling, cognitive problems, and EMF radiation, particularly in schools with Wi-Fi. Okay? That there are bio effects from exposure is inevitable, whether you feel it directly or not. Okay? So remember, we talked about the long-term cumulative effects. Okay? That regulatory bodies, very important point, are under the thumb of industrial commercial operators. As we know, for example, in the meat industry, a lot of the standards, or in the dairy industry, a lot of the standards that the FDA in the United States put out is influenced by the very industries they're supposed to regulate. It's the same for the telecommunication industry. And that she talks about also the demand for 5G is strictly for money. More bandwidth is needed to deliver and sell more product. I will leave you to go and watch the video for yourself. This is just a summary. But the thing is that whether you believe her or not her, believe all of the information that she cites, or whether you believe the current people that feel that mobile phone technology is safe and that mobile phone broadcast technology, meaning the towers, is safe, you have a duty to understand that the future technology will be totally different than what is ever been done before. That's the first expert, okay, Daphne Takova. And as I said, all of the information that she gives is not from herself. She gives citations for all of them, and you can find her information at this website here, okay? So you can go forth and do that. This next one, because people say, well, Daphne Takova, she's just a lawyer, okay? Well, Dr. Deborah Davis is not a lawyer, okay? She's a scientist. And her video is called The Truth About Mobile Phone and Wireless Radiation. She's an internationally recognized expert on electromagnetic radiation, because a lot of people will tell you when you start to express concerns that you have a tinfoil hat. You don't know what you're talking about. You have experts out here with years and years of experience in the field who also are saying similar things about the current technology. The current technology. And we need to understand, I'm going to keep reiterating, that the future technology, in particular the millimeter wave technology, will change the handsets that will be used. It's going to change the Wi-Fi routers that will be used. It's going to change the distribution networks, the small cell networks, the density of them, the main mass is going to change all of that. And what does she say in her presentation? You can go and watch it yourself. Children in particular, okay, lots of things are done for adults. What we're talking about, children absorb more radiation from wireless devices than adults. The exposure extends into the brain stem, so when they're using the phones and things like that, okay. Mobile phone exposes gonads, which when people put in their pockets, which can reduce sperm counts and bone marrow. And the thing that she says, and a lot of the people who are speaking against a warning against the mobile phones is that mobile phones are designed for a certain use. It's just like cigarettes. Now we've recognized how harmful they are, so they write on the packaging certain labels and certain warnings. And mobile phones don't do that. They're designed to be used at a distance. And even when you sign up to the mobile phone, they ask you to read a disclaimer. Most people just click right through. They say, oh, I agree. But if you read that, there are warnings in those parts of the user agreements that talk about safe use. And most people don't do that. They put it in their pockets and do different things. They give it to their children. They're not designed to be used like that. So what's going to happen with the new technology? People are going to treat the new phones. Oh, you're going to get an upgrade. You're going to treat that new phone just like you did with the old phone. You're not going to recognize that it's different. And I'm going to talk about that later. So back to her. She says fetuses in late-term pregnancy can be exposed to radiation in near proximity to mobile phones and tablets. She talks about people putting tablets on their bellies, when they're pregnant. What's going to happen in the new generation of tablets? Things that are making use of the 5G technology, okay, at the millimeter wave wavelengths. Prenatal exposure to radiation damages brain cells in laboratory tests and affected the memory of rats. It can cause tumors in breasts. Okay, prenatal exposed mice have hyperactivity and more anxiety. And very importantly, it took 40 years for increase in brain cancer to show up in the population from Hiroshima nuclear bombing. So what she says in her video is that, yes, mobile phones have been around for quite some time, but in reality, have they really? It was only in the 90s that the technology has come about, okay? And it's now 2020, so that's 30 years. We need a much longer time to really understand the impact of this electromagnetic radiation and the electromagnetic fields that we are exposing ourselves to. And now we're already moving on to 5G, which hasn't been tested, okay? So you can go and watch that one on your own also. Moving quickly. It's the same concern. All of these are the same concern. Okay? The increase in exposure to electromagnetic radiation on a terrestrial level. So I've presented 2 experts so far. Here's another expert. Okay? Who is he? He used to be an engineer and now he's turned technology health advocate. He knows what he's talking about. He also has major concerns about radiation exposure limits. And he says that most of the time, the people in industry are going to talk about the thermal effects. And the studies are not been done, enough studies are not been done on the non-thermal effects. Because we all know that microwaves, which are the waves that are used in mobile phones, okay, can cause heating. And when you most people know now not to put the phone to the head because it can cause heating, and put the phone next to the breast and stuff like that because it can cause the heating effect. Okay, but he's saying that there's other non-thermal effects also that are not being studied, and that again he gives a study. And he shows for a fact that regulatory bodies are being influenced by industry funding. So all of the limits that they're being set with the influence of the very people that are supposed to be being monitored. Okay? And he talks about, on his website, he provides many references to the impacts, the effects on endocrine system in rats, sperm function, brain tissue, and RNA damage. You can go and see his information for yourself. He's an expert in the field. He's not a tinfoil man, tinfoil hat. He's an expert. And this last person, okay, is one of the most respected out there in the field, okay? Dr. Anthony Miller, because they will tell me that I'm wearing a tinfoil hat because I have concerns. Well, how about telling Dr. Anthony Miller about that? Okay, look at it. I couldn't even fit all of his background, all of his qualifications. Okay, he's a professor. He's been a professor. I can't remember. You can go and look it up for yourself. He's been a professor emeritus at a university in this field. particularly in terms of electromagnetic radiation and cancer. And he himself talks about that radio frequency radiation causes cancer in rats. And there's a study that's been done that people will quote. It's the National Toxicology Program. Please go and look it up. Okay? That conclusively said that electromagnetic radiation is a carcinogen. Okay? And this study has been backed up by another study, because they're going to say, he says, that the NTP study was done at really high levels and people normally won't get that type of radiation. And he says, well, in the video, he says there's another study that was done at much lower level and it's also backed up that the results of the link between cancer and electromagnetic radiation. He talks about the interferon study. This is for my people, all my industry experts that will quote the interferon study. Please go and look it up. The interferon study downplayed the link between cancer and radio frequency. But if you look it up, it's been reanalyzed by many scientists, and they realized that it actually showed more of a link than they first expected, that radio frequency can be a carcinogen. Okay? And he talks about that it's not ubiquitous in the impacts. In other words, here, mobile phone positioning is a key component of exposure and thus long-term effects, and phone limits are tested at certain distances that are usually being contravened. In other words, when we use our phones, we're not using them in the same way that things are being tested for, and we're not using them in the same way that the limits are telling us we should use them for. So for the people in the industry to say that mobile phones are totally fine, okay, and all of the studies prove it, and that the limits are not being contravened. People are not using them in the way that the limits are being tested for. And again, this keeps coming up. Take a bit of water. That children are the most susceptible to RF radiation exposure. Okay, and that the RF carcinogen effect is amplified by other risk factors that cause cancer. In other words, if you're taking in this electromagnetic radiation, it might not be a harm by itself, but when it's amplified with other carcinogens in the environment, for example, alcohol, for example, maybe certain foods we eat, for example, certain chemicals we take in, okay, from our paints and all different things, that the effect can be amplified, and that's not been studied enough. This gentleman is a multi-year expert, and he still has concerns. So we're going to hear a bit more from him. You can go and look on the Environmental Health Trust and watch the video for yourself. They have lots of information. Okay, about him.
Welcome everyone. I am Theodore.
So please post the link. Okay, the notes, yeah. So, the 5G mobiles, what we need to understand that based off of all of what I just said, okay, and there are many more. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 experts who have long videos with many links who have concerns about this, okay, about
Welcome everyone. I am
about these mobile phones. Okay, we need to understand that the industry experts are going to tell you that all of those people, all of those experts don't matter. Okay, but listen to this. Let's remember that 5G mobiles will be totally different than their predecessors. Okay, think about this. Here we have the blue light filter that a lot of us use currently now in our current mobile phones, the blue light filter. Okay, so even our phones currently have things that are not safe for us. So they put in a blue light filter because they recognize that there were things that are not accounted for in the technology that might make us unsafe. So they've now put in part of the software and the hardware a way to, for example, to filter off the blue light, which can be harmful to our eyes. Okay? So, what will be different about the mobile phones in the future that we will not recognize how harmful they will be? Here we go. It says, as between millimeter wave and non-millimeter wave 5G devices, the component cost differences are stark. Why? Okay, it says that here. Multiple millimeter wave antennas are partially responsible for the expense. Samsung uses 3 separate antennas to connect to US millimeter wave 5G towers, and engineering decisions that enables its S10 5G to avoid your holding it wrong attenuation by switching to whichever antenna is exposed at a given moment. This article right here shows you that the new generation of mobile phones, and this is just for 5G, 4G LTE. This isn't for the future millimeter wave, but so this is showing that the Samsung phone that's existing even now is totally different than the mobile phones that are currently the top rated mobile phones that are currently on the market for 4G. These have 3 separate antennas. Okay, and as you know, the antenna is where the information and the signal, the electromagnetic radiation. So how can we use the same standards for new generation of mobile phones and new generation of broadcasting sites and small cell sites? You can't. Okay, so the concerns will change. What do I mean? Look, here we go. So if you see here, this talks about the 5G. Okay, so this is the old way of doing things. Okay, the more you centralize, all right, this is what you end up with, these big towers. Okay, massive MIMO networks. All right, but if you look on the left, this is the more you distribute. This is the future. Okay, the 5G millimeter wave. And you can see here, what's this on each house? Okay, on each house you have smart meters and you have small cells. Okay, and here it says enterprise small cells. So this is in like dense environments. And then it says residential small cells. And the same thing down here, you see 4G. 4G doesn't have any small cells. Here's the big towers that we're used to seeing, that I showed you earlier being phased away. And what do you see here? 4G LTE and 5G. Look at 5G. 5G has the small cell antennas. Okay, this is 4G LTE, still the big ones. This is 5G, the millimeter wave technology. See the small ones that I saw today in the city? Right there, look, on the lamppost, Okay, this is the future of what they're talking about. So that distributed technology of 5G for the future is totally different than anything that's existed today. So the same standards, the same safety studies that show safe use cannot be applied. That model cannot be applied to what they're expecting in the future. Okay, I think I'm going to move on from reading these links, because I think we get the point of what I'm trying to say. Let me quickly take a look. So I want to make sure. Yeah. So this is one of those studies. Okay. This is the National Toxicology Program that I talked about. So in this study here, this one, this is a very good article about from the BBC, does 5G pose health risk? Okay, and the article, this is for the people who are in industry. This summarizes all the things. This is 15th July 2019, so very recent. This summarizes all the things that they will tell you about. The people that are in industry, and said there's no need to be concerned about 5G. Okay, it says, as with previous cellular technologies, 5G networks rely on signals carried by radio waves, so on and so on. All right, and it talks about 5G, and it talks about the concerns, and says that there is evidence that falls short of being conclusive that exposure may cause cancer in humans. So there's no evidence, they're basically saying. All right, talks about the National Toxicology Report here, no cancer link found. Okay, it just goes on, and it talks about the non-ionizing effect of radio waves, which most people in industry will use as an example of why cell phones do not cause cellular damage. It talks about the transmitter mass and how 5G technology requires lots of new base stations, but it says here in bold, the radio frequency fields that are normally accessible to the public are many times below guideline levels. It just goes into all of the things that people in industry will tell you about 5G, and that it has no harm, it's not going to cause any harm. Okay, cool. But the studies that are being done now are showing that National Toxicology Program releases final report on rat and mouse studies of radio frequency radiation like that used in 2G and 3G cell phone. And it says here, okay, that, where is it? To summarize, we believe that the link between radio frequency radiation and tumors in male rats is real, and the external experts agreed. Okay, so they know that there's a link between radio frequency radiation and tumors, okay, and cancer. All right, so what the critics of this study will say is here. This is what, because I'm going to show you that I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. This is what the critics will say. The lowest exposure level used in the studies was equal to the maximum local tissue exposure currently allowed for cell phone users. This power level rarely occurs with typical cell phone use. The highest exposure levels in the studies was 4 times higher than the maximum power level permitted. So in other words, they're going to say that yes, there was a link found between the use of the exposure to the radio waves in this study and the cancer in rats, but the levels that were tested on were way higher than what would ever be found in normal use. That's how they're going to get away from it. The reality is, as we said here, okay, the future technology, including the future phones, the future distribution network, is totally different than the past paradigm. We're entering into totally different waters with regards to 5G. And to be honest, we're all going to be the lab rats that they're going to test it on. Just like it was for smoking, where it wasn't for over 50 years until we had the type of legislation that we have now. Just like it is for chlorine, where we saw some great benefits from chlorine, and then lo and behold, they realized that actually it can cause cancer, and it causes bladder cancer in men. Just like it was for lights and lighting in our neighborhoods, which everyone says is great. We have safe street lights and so on and so on, but now they're realizing is damaging the health of animals and humans. And just like it is for plastics, where plastics, the only thing that they thought was causing a problem was that it was filling up landfills and using the non-renewable resource. And now they're realizing that there are things that were unseen, like microplastics, that are actually causing more of an issue. The same can be said for medications, which they're finding in our drinking water, especially medications that are hormonal based and are affecting our endocrine glands. They didn't test for that because they never thought it would get that far. It's the same here. They're going to tell you that everything is fine, but they don't know because the paradigm that they're moving into is untested. Okay, and I've given enough evidence for that. So let's keep moving on. The concern number 2. Not only are the devices and the broadband and so on untested, the frequencies that they hope to use for millimeter wave technology also has many different properties. Okay, now this has been around since 1997. This was an FCC bulletin. It talks about millimeter wave propagation. So they've been talking about it since then. And this is what many people will be concerned about when it talks about that when they're using millimeter waves, okay, they're attenuated, or in other words absorbed by molecules of oxygen, water vapor, and other gaseous atmospheric constituents. Okay, so people that are in the industry know that, they know about this. This is why they have to have the towers, the cells very close together, because the signal cannot travel far because it's going to be lost, it's going to be absorbed by oxygen and water vapor. So even if it rains, the signal is not going to penetrate as far. So they have to have the cells closer together. Okay, so we talked about that, the millimeter wave, which is the 60 gigahertz. Okay, so what's the issue with that? All right, well, the issue with that is that these frequencies, these millimeter wave frequencies, okay, are untested in these urban dense environments. Okay, so for example, even trees, it says here, foliage losses at millimeter wave frequencies are significant. Okay, in fact, the foliage loss may be a limiting propagation impairment in some cases. In other words, the more trees you have, the less these things are gonna absorb. Why? Because the trees are going to absorb them. If trees are absorbing them, that means they are absorbing the radiation. Why? Because the trees have water in them, and these millimeter waves cannot penetrate like the longer wavelengths. Okay. So why is that important? It's important because it's not known how this future use of this technology will impact on human health. It's not just me saying that. This is a professor, Paul Ben Aishay, okay, PhD. He's giving a lecture which you can go and watch it up, okay, and he's an engineer, okay, and he's talking about the use of millimeter wave technology and how even the sweat glands, which obviously contain water and salts of the human body, can act as mini antennas. Okay, so what they will tell you is that with the millimeter wave technology, it doesn't get absorbed into the skin like a normal mobile phone, like this one. All right, like a normal mobile phone, it comes with what's called an SAR, specific absorption rate, because they know that when you hold that phone up to your head, the radiation can penetrate beyond the skin into the tissue. That's why you're not supposed to hold your phone up to your head or put it into your shirt and put it into your pocket, because it can penetrate into the tissue and it can cause warming. Okay, it won't be ionizing, but it can cause warming, and you can have health impacts from that. With the millimeter wave, people are going to say, oh, this is safer. Why? Because it doesn't penetrate. It doesn't penetrate into the skin or past the skin. Okay? But what they're showing, and what this gentleman is showing with his models and with his experiments, is that the fact that it doesn't penetrate into the skin could end up with effects that we are not aware of. And remember, we're talking about high density networks that are quite close to you as a user, because they have to be. Okay? So the millimeter wavelengths can interact with the water in your sweat glands, which are right at the surface. You can see here, here's the sweat gland that's coiled. You can go and watch the video for yourself. Here's the link. Human sweat glands are located on the skin and can act as mini antenna due to absorption depth. This can cause pronounced heating effect at millimeter wavelengths. Okay, and he's not sure, he says, about the effects on people because people have different physiology. What about people of different ethnicity, different ages, different activity levels? What if you're sweating? What if you just have different types of skin compared to someone else? How will that impact you? There's no studies that have been done on this. This is new technology for the future. So for people to say that, oh, the same paradigm that we operated under with past mobile phones is what we can operate under with the future use of 5G technology, is just disingenuous. Okay? Let's keep moving on. So remember what I'm doing. I'm looking at concerns. Sorry. Concern number 1, where I presented 4 different professors, well, not professors, but 4 different experts in the field, was about increase in exposure to electromagnetic radiation on the terrestrial level. Okay, so how would that impact? How does the new paradigm of 5G, how is it going to impact the increase in exposure to electromagnetic radiation? Concern number 2 was the use of untested frequencies like the millimeter wave frequencies like 60 gigahertz. Okay. Concern number 3. Okay. How about ecology? How about the untested impact on ecology? Meaning, and that you can go to the Environmental Health Trust, they have numerous articles and how the electromagnetic fields from power lines, cell phones, cell towers, and wireless impacts the birds, bees, and wildlife in the environment. You can go and read them for yourself. So now that we will have a whole new system of transmission, we won't just have these big towers anymore. We're going to have small cells distributed throughout urban dense areas. People are even trying to put them into local parks, as I showed you earlier. Okay? How would that affect things like the birds and the bees and the bats? Okay, in my neighborhood I have bats. Okay, I see them at night, when, especially during the summertime, they will fly in and out of the light around in my neighborhood, in my garden. All right, we don't know how these things are going to impact on the ecology. They're just assuming that the 5G future technology, millimeter wave system, will not have any impact. But yet there's already evidence from the current technology that it impacts our ecology. So I've given you 3 concerns already. Okay? Concern number 4. How about our extraterrestrial increase in exposure? Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay, listen, as I said at the beginning, you are just a commodity to many of these people that want to deal with 5G. They don't care about you, they don't care about your family, they don't care about your community, they don't care about your environment. They just care about the dollar and control. So here is an article. It says, family, I hope you're with me because I'm getting to the end now, and I'm getting to the most important part of 5G. For those people that are with me live, we're going to get to the most important part coming up with concern number 5. Okay? So far I've just given the health concerns, and for the people that are going to be watching in the future on the YouTube, stay tuned. Okay? The major things coming after this, but let's deal with this first. Concern number 4. The FCC approves SpaceX, which is owned by Elon Musk. Okay, the same guy who's making the Tesla cars. They approved SpaceX to deploy up to 1 million small antennas for the Starlink internet network. They didn't say 100. They didn't say 1,000. They didn't say 10,000. They didn't say 100,000. They said 1 million small antenna. This is the type of mindset that these people want to see happen as a reality. In the beginning, beginning of this video, I showed the utopia of a forest. I was in a forest and you heard the birds singing. These people's mindset are totally different than mine and maybe than yours. Why would you want to put 1 million antennas into space? I mean, who thinks like that? So it says here the FCC has authorized SpaceX to begin rolling out as many as 1 million of the ground antenna the company will need to connect users to its Starlink satellite internet network. Okay, sorry, I was wrong there. I was wrong. They want to put 1 million small antenna on the ground, and they want to put in a constellation, to connect those antennas with 12,000 small satellites. And they've already launched 360 satellites already in this year. So that's even worse. They want to put 1 million small antennas. We've already talked about these small antennas on the ground, and then want to have 12,000 satellites or in space. Space is already cluttered with space junk. Okay? The license details that each ground antenna is only 0.5 meter in diameter and just under 19 inches across. Okay, so this ain't the large towers. We said they're moving away from that paradigm. And again, here it says Starlink is intended for about the 3% hardest to reach customers. So they're not just talking about flooding the dense areas as I showed with small cells. They also want to flood the rural areas also. Okay? There's no corner of the earth that they will be satisfied until it's covered with electromagnetic radiation emitting devices, particularly for the 5G, and there's a reason why. Okay? And here, already you can see the impacts. SpaceX and Starlink are changing the night sky and fast. Why? Astronomers sound the alarm about Elon Musk's project, but the drive to launch thousands of broadband satellites is only accelerating. They don't care about what the astronomers are saying. Here, the image of a distant galaxy group from the Lowell Observatory in Arizona is marred by diagonal lines from the trails of Starlink satellites shortly after their launch in May. How sad that they even want to change the way that we look at space. They don't want you to see the sky as it stands. When you look out to space, you're going to see they want you to see thousands and thousands. Just him alone was at 12,000 antenna. And if you see me looking to the side, I'm looking out my window. They want to see thousands and thousands of these satellites in space, moving around the night sky. This is the paradigm that they want. And all to put forth the 5G infrastructure. Okay? And it's not just Elon Musk. Here, Vodafone joins space race to build 5G broadband satellite network. Okay? The UK telecom operator has joined Japanese technology giant. It's planning to build a mobile broadband network in space. Okay? To turn ordinary mobile phones into satellite phones. They're all competing. And they want to not only take over the urban dense areas, they want to take over the country areas, okay, the rural areas, and they also want to take over space, all for 5G. And this goes back to my original thing about the global commons. They have no respect for the global commons, whether it's the atmosphere, whether it's outer space. None whatsoever. So why should we be concerned with 5G? I presented so much evidence already. But the reality is that they want to move the global commons to what's called a common good. And you can see it comes into economics here. In other words, business. What's the difference? The common goods are defined in economics as goods that are rivalrous and non-excludable. Thus, they constitute one of the four main types based on the criteria. So in other words, they're basically saying, okay, that instead of being global commons that need to be maintained for everyone, the things that people can exploit, like fish. Okay? For example, like fish. Okay? That's what they want to turn our atmosphere into and space into resources, in other words. Okay? You need more information? Why? You need more evidence? Why? Look at President Trump. Why does President Trump want to mine on the moon? Why? He said the U.S. president recently signed an executive order, okay, meaning it didn't have to go through Congress or anything like that, stating America has the right to explore and use resources from outer space. The order also said the U.S. did not see space as a common area, meaning a common good for resources, okay, and didn't need permission of international agreements to get started. He doesn't see space and the moon as a global commons. He sees it as something to exploit. And that's the same way they see space in terms of 5G. Okay? And that's the same way they see our electromagnetic atmosphere also. So I presented many concerns. Okay? Just give me a thumbs up if you're still here. Press 1 if you've been here for the length of this. For the length of this presentation. Press 1 if you've been here for the length of this presentation. There's a bit of delay, so I'm just watching the comments as they come. Quentin Stubble, thank you for being here for the length of this presentation. 2 hours and 30 minutes. Okay, good. All right, we're going to wrap it up now. Okay, I presented 4 concerns that relate to 5G. 4 concerns. The first is the increasing use of electromagnetic radiation in ways that are going to change, because the power outputs and the different devices that are going to be used are going to be totally different. From the handsets to the base stations to the small cells, all of that will be different. Number 2 was the untested frequencies. That's the second concern. Okay. Number 3 was the ecology and the impact on ecology. The impact on ecology. That was the third concern. How would it affect the insects, the birds, the bees, the butterflies. This technology that will be on 24 hours a day. Okay? We're talking about the future. Millimeter wave technology, small cells located throughout your neighborhood, throughout the city, even in the countryside. I've proven all of that. I'm not making any of this up. Those were 4 concerns. Okay? Now, before I get into concern 5, what the naysayers will say to me, they'll say, I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, and they'll say, don't you use a mobile phone? Don't you use a microwave? Don't you use Wi-Fi? Yes, I use those things. I use the Wi-Fi. I have a microwave in my house that my family uses. I have a mobile phone. I have this laptop. Okay? I even have smart devices, tablets and stuff like that. However, the more I've educated myself, the more I understand the exposure that I have to these, and I've become more educated and been able to understand what some of the risks are of using those things. Okay? So I'm not saying that people should not use them, or not use mobile phones and not use this, but we need to be educated on the possibilities of what people have already shown could happen, And we need to know that 5G is an untested technology that we need to be very careful about in the future. Okay? This last concern is more important to me than any of the technological concerns. So this is for all the people that will say mobile phones are safe, 5G is safe. Let's say that we all agree that 5G is totally safe from a technological perspective and a health perspective. This is the most important part of my presentation. Okay? And I call it concern number 5. The utopian future is dystopian, meaning the people that are pushing the 5G, what they see as a utopia is not a utopia for me and you. Now, I asked people what do they think 5G was important for, and I got a lot of responses on my Facebook. Okay, so some very passionate people. One person said that, you know, she wears a hearing aid and the 5G technology will allow her hearing aid to get less distortion and disruption because of the way it interacts. Okay, the way that it can interact as a smart device. The future 5G hearing aids will be much better because it can take out noise, and you know, it sounds amazing. Very powerful. She talked about, this person also talked about that because they can't hear, when they're doing meetings and stuff, they can have technology that will transcribe the information in real time for her. Okay, so that's another positive thing about 5G. Okay, then there are some of the things that are less, you know, do we really need them, like driverless cars? That's going to put people out of work, you know, but maybe it might make driving more safer. We shall see. I know they were scrapped because they were getting in accidents. Virtual reality, I mean, do we really need that? There's so many issues with technology and the way it interfaces with our brain anyway. Drone delivery, more things that are going to put people out of work. Okay. Faster downloads and uploads of media such as movies and music. Well, everybody likes faster downloads and uploads in this information age. All right, so 5G can bring that, and there are countless more applications. And this is what this is from the European Commission. This is what they want 5G to look like. This is what they think 5G will look like. Okay. Oh, this is the future vision they're giving for 5G. You have the smart cars and the smart watches, you know, smart mobility, smart parking. You know, hospitals have all of the 5G in it, things like that. Domotics, meaning things in your house, all the different smart devices. This is the future that they want to sell you on. But the reality is, as I said with my concern, their utopian future that they're trying to paint is really a dystopian one. This is the most important part of my presentation. 5G is not about you. 5G is not about driverless cars, hearing aids, faster transcription time, virtual reality, faster downloads and uploads. It's not about that, family. Okay? And here's the little cartoon. It says, whoa, this is fast, and they're enjoying the 5G. And who do you have here? He says, yes, wow, this is fast, and he's taking all of your data, sucking up all of your data, unlimited data collection, and they put the deep state. Okay, and they have the 5G towers. Okay, this is the tinfoil hat, isn't it? Well, we said at the beginning of this, we already showed with Snowden, okay, that these governments are already collecting mountains and mountains of information on people. Okay, without your knowledge. Facebook was in a scandal where they were influencing elections. The future 5G is not about you. It's not about your better hearing aids and virtual reality and you and your tablets and stuff like that. It's not about you. Who owns 5G? Definitely not you. This is just a UK example. Okay, here's Telefonica, which is the parent company of O2 UK. Okay, who owns Telefonica? Okay, O2 UK. Well, Telefonica is owned by 6.7% of BlackRock, which is a US like a venture capital place. Okay, then there's a bank, Argentinian bank. Just get my cursor up. All right, and so different societies own that company. Okay, different societies own this company. All right, different banking and financial institutions and stuff like that. All right, so Telefonica operates all across. It says it's present in more than 20 countries around Europe and America. Okay, so when they switch on their 5G networks, which they already have, that information and that connectivity is in the hands of all of those people. Okay, look at Vodafone. Vodafone has operations across all of these countries. Africa, all across Africa and the Middle East, the Americas, Asia Pacific, and obviously in the United States as well. Okay, so 5G, these companies and the rollout of 5G, the information and the access to information is not owned by you. It has nothing to do with you. It's for these companies, it's all about money. That's what it's about. But it goes deeper than that, family. I'm going to keep going. Okay, so for example, I wrote to Vodafone because I wanted some information about the towers that I was seeing in my area. And Vodafone didn't write me back. This company here, which is the Cornerstone Telecommunications Infrastructure Limited Company, wrote me back and they said, your query has been passed to this person. This is a customer service person from Vodafone. All right. And that this company plans and maintains base stations for Vodafone and O2. Okay, so this company works together for Vodafone and O2. So two companies which seem disconnected, Vodafone and O2, are actually falling under the same umbrella when it comes to mobile technology. Okay, when it comes to mobile technology, they're under the same umbrella. Okay, so we're talking about who owns 5G. Well, if you look here, this company, CTIL, who I got it from, CTIL, okay, who owns them? They're owned by O2 and Vodafone. In other words, it's circular. Okay, it's circular. Vodafone and O2 has set up a company to manage all of their mobile plans and their base stations, to plan and maintain their both base stations for basically for the future for 5G and for 4G. Okay, so when you write to them and on the mobile phone mast, you will see a notice that says if you want inquiries, you could email this place Cornerstone. So you think you're going to a separate company who's going to handle your complaints and your concerns independently, and they're not separate. They're owned by the same company the same companies that they're being asked to kind of regulate. How is that fair? That's a conflict of interest. That the same company that's being asked to provide guidelines and a customer response for concerns is actually managed by parent companies that where the signal is coming out. Can you not see the trickery that's going on here? Okay, but let's keep going down this rabbit hole, and I'm starting to wrap up, so I appreciate everyone's patience. That was the commercial interest. 5G is not even about commercial interest, family. This is the most important part of the presentation. So all of my people who are in industry, who are, singing the praises of the safety of 5G, and all of my consumers who are looking forward to downloading faster videos and having the technology and stuff like that. Okay, having the technology, they're open to it. We need to understand that 5G is not about you. It's not about your company. It's nothing to do with that. And this is in America, this is in UK, and possibly you need to look into your local areas also. Like, for example, where my family is in Bermuda. These are multinational strategies being put out for reasons. Look here, the national strategy to secure 5G. This is a government a document from the President of the United States, March 2020. He says, "My fellow Americans, 5th generation wireless technology, or 5G, will be a primary driver of our nation's prosperity and security in the 21st century. The first line says it all. 5G will be a primary driver of the nation's prosperity and security in the 21st century. 5G has nothing to do with you as a consumer. 5G is a matter of national strategic placement for these huge state entities like the United States." So this is just the United States. Okay? This national strategy to secure 5G articulates his vision, talking about Trump, the president, for America to lead the development, deployment, and management of secure and reliable 5G communications, arm in arm with our closest partners and allies. Okay? And they're going to do everything they can to facilitate the domestic 5G rollout, like giving permission to Elon Musk to put his 1 million antennas in rural areas, like giving permission to Vodafone and all of these cell companies to put the small cells throughout the urban and dense communities. They're going to be facilitated to do that without the testing. It's not going to be required. Why? Because it's part of the nation's prosperity and security, the primary driver. Okay, good. It's not just me saying this. 5G is the new arms race. Now this is where the conspiracy theorists will come in, and they're going to talk about corona. Okay, and whether or not coronavirus was leaked by the Chinese to cause disruption in the American economy. Okay, but the reality is, whether you believe in that or not, or whether more evidence comes out about that, 5G is the new arms race. This is what it's all about. Even in the UK here, Huawei, which is the major technology company in China, they are the ones who are providing most of the technology, or they were going to provide most of the technology in the UK for their 5G rollout. Okay, but due to President Trump, okay, President Trump has put a ban, as you can see here, a ban on the use of Huawei in America, being used in America in general. All right, does it say it in the article? I don't think it says it in the article, okay, but it says it much later on. All right, but I think I have it down here that Huawei banned full-time timeline US government China. So here you can go to this link and you can see that President Trump has ordered that Huawei, which provides a lot of the 5G technology across the world, has been banned in the United States. Why? Because he's afraid that the Chinese will be able to get into the back door to the 5G technology. in the United States and thereby compromise their security. This is what 5G is about. It's not about you and your little things that you want to do with your cell phones and with your tablets and movies and music and driverless cars. It's about security. Now, how is it about security and why? So, here we go. And the comment says, who earns 5G? Managed by parent companies. 5G certainly not about you and me. 5G new arms race. Exactly. Thank you for the notes. Okay. Thank you for the notes. This one is from the National Strategy to Secure 5G from the US. Europe is the basis for all of this, okay? A lot of times it seems like the US is the driver. We need to understand that the big players are in Europe, okay? The big players are in Europe. You have the US, you have Europe, and you have China and Russia. That's the big players. That's the links there, okay? So here's from the Europe document. This is so important, and I hope people are with me. Still, Europe shaping the 5G vision. This is from their document. Here's the link. Having identified the 5G opportunities early, the European Commission established a public-private partnership on 5G. Let's skip down to here. This is the EU flagship initiative to accelerate research and innovation in 5G technology. The European Commission has earmarked public funding of euro 700 million through the Horizon 2020 program to support this activity. The EU industry is set to match this investment by up to 5 times to more than euro 3 billion. They're investing heavily into this, okay? These activities have been accompanied by an international plan. Who? An international plan. Who? International, to ensure global consensus building on 5G. Okay? This is where it gets interesting. Why? The 5G research and standards is necessary to support the traffic volume expected by 2025. Traffic volume meaning the amount of data, to boost networks and internet architectures in emerging areas such as machine-to-machine communication and the Internet of Things. It's one of the 5 priority areas under the Digitizing European Industry initiatives. This is it here, family. This is what it's all about. Machine-to-machine communication and the Internet of Things. Remember that document, that little diagram I showed you? This is what they want you to think it's about. This is not what it's about. All of the devices. This is what it's all about. It's about having the standards in to support machine-to-machine communication and the Internet of Things. What's machine-to-machine communication? It's a paradigm in which the end-to-end communication is executed without human intervention. Without human intervention, connecting non-IT object to an IT infrastructure. We're talking about a world where humans are not included. That's what they want to get to. What's the Internet of Things? The Internet of Things merges physical and virtual worlds, creating smart environments. The Internet of Things represents the next steps towards the digitizing of our society and economy, where objects and people are interconnected through communication networks and report about their status and their surrounding environments. 5G, this is what it's all about. So if you're not concerned with any of the technology, like the safety of it, let's say we all agree on that. It's all fine. You're not concerned about how it would affect the ecology and animals. You're all fine. You need to be concerned about this, because this is the paradigm. They say this is the paradigm that they want to lead you, lead your family, lead your community, and most of all, because they're talking about the future, lead your children's children into. What does it look like? This is what it looks like. This is not my words. This is their words. 5G will provide virtually ubiquitous ultra-high bandwidth and will serve to connect a wide range of applications and sectors. It will be the eyes and ears of artificial intelligence systems, as it will provide real-time data collection and analysis. They're talking about machine to machine, which is executed without human intervention. They're talking about the Internet of Things, which is where people and objects are connected and things are getting reported about their status in the surrounding environment. And now they're talking about artificial intelligence systems. This is the new paradigm that they want to promote and put you into. And they're pawning it off as an Orwellian dystopia. Exactly. They're pawning it off as some nice thing where everyone's going to be happy downloading the movies and being in a virtual reality. That's not what it's about. Take a look. Look at this, family. This is from the EU.
Words can't describe my happiness every time I visit my son's family.
Hello, you are 5 kilometers from home.
The EU's video on the Internet of Things, the European Union's vision of the Internet of Things.
There's an 80% chance for congestion ahead. Would you like me to change the route to the best alternative?
I don't recognize this voice. When I asked my son, he said it was the smart city that spoke to him. Through IoT, his car communicates with the city. What does he mean, the smart city spoke to him? And who is this IoT guy? Home at last. I can't wait to see my granddaughter. What is he staring at? Interesting. Was the door unlocked? That's certainly not the cat. Oh dear, a fancy gadget. My granddaughter must think I'm a teenage geek. Wait, this wearable seems to be smart and useful.
Door unlocked. Door locked.
What a wonderful day. What's my favourite doctor up to? Is this a new social network? When I was her age, my doctor wasn't checking graphs on television.
You can go watch the rest of the video, okay? But how do they make it seem? Very benign. He's smiling. He's talking about the cars talking back to him. You know, his granddaughter shows him some device and gives him devices, and there's a little robot vacuum cleaner that comes across, and he's like, ooh, what's that? That's not the dog. Very benign. Okay? That's what they think. That's what they want you to, that's what they want to make you think it's like, or think life will be like. But this is a better image, a better reality of what they're trying to head for. Okay? And all the links are up here so you can go and watch them yourself. Let's juxtapose that from the EU to people's future vision as explained through TV.
You're okay? Are you okay?
I really am. I'm fine. Honestly, I swear I'm fine.
There. You can let that breathe for 10 minutes. All looking good. I'll come back and I'll dress them.
Do you see? These are interaction nodes. If I use this finger, I can open all the doors at work, no ID. And if I just scan this in the shop, I can pay for anything up to £1,000. And look, Dad, Mom, I've just taken your photo. Send and send. It doesn't need the sound effect, I just added that because it makes me laugh.
You promised me they wouldn't touch your eyes. Not after last time.
That was years ago. Gran's had stem cells in her eyes since then.
I can't help thinking... Don't laugh. All these power cuts. Well, what would happen to you?
Nothing. What happens to you in a power cut? Nothing.
So, what about your head?
Can't feel a thing. They inserted the tiniest wafer into my brain. And, oh my god, look at the result. Synced us up. No keyboard. I don't need a keyboard ever again.
You did that by thinking?
It can't read my mind. Not.
So family, we're gonna watch the rest because this is very important. This is coming from this show called Years and Years. You need to go look up the show. You need to look up who's written for the show. He's the same man that's been writing the Doctor Who. Okay? And you need to look up his background. Trust me. And you need to look up the connection between Doctor Who and future technology, because Doctor Who has been around in England for many decades. Okay? And I want you to go a bit deeper. We don't have time to go deeper on that, but I want you to go and look at this show. All right? So what's happened so far, as just to narrate a bit, the daughter here, Bethany, has had devices installed in her hands, in her eyes, and in her brain. And now she's connected to the Internet of Things. So she's taken the pictures of her parents and she's downloaded that right away to their phones. She says she's able to control the locks at her jaw with the implants that she's had in her hands, as well as she has something inserted in her brain stem, a very small wafer. She says they cannot read her mind, not yet. Okay, so these are all things that are currently in play. All right, I want you to go and do your research. I put a Facebook post up previously about voice to skull technology. Okay, they already have these technologies where they can beam out electromagnetic radiation and you can hear it in your head. I'm not making this up. Okay, and there's many other technologies, so let's keep listening.
Thinking?
It can't read my mind. Not yet, but the wafer tracks activity in the neural pathway and micromovements in the retina to predict what I'm thinking.
But that is reading your mind.
So she says they cannot read her mind, but the wafer predicts her neural pathways to predict. The wafer reads the neural messages in her neural pathway to predict what she's thinking. So in a sense, they're reading her mind. They know what she wants to do before she even does it.
Let's see where everyone is. There's Aunt Rosie. She's at home. Lincoln's in school. Lee's not in school. Should be. Where is he? In the park. Don't tell Rosie. Gran's at home in the kitchen. What a surprise. Let's find Ruby. She's in a bar called the Marine Tide and she's just bought a bottle of House White for £56.
It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
56 quid for the House White.
Oh my god, how did it go, Beth?
So she's tracking lots of people in her family. That's showing you, what they're trying to show you is the way that we currently can be tracked, and they would like to track us. Okay? That they would like to track us. And just today in the UK, they've started to talk about the contact tracing system that they are going to be putting in place so that people can get back to work during this coronavirus lockdown, and that people will only be able to go back to work if they download this app, which will come from the NHS and which will track people using Bluetooth and will tell people their location and the location of other people who have symptoms. We're not talking about far-flung in the future, we're talking about now, but the 5G will take this to another level.
How are you? Did it work? Are you completely synced up now?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm with Mum and Dad. And I've just realised you're in trouble.
You should be in college.
56 quid.
For God's sake, Bethany!
That's amazing. And a little bit like spying. What if I didn't want you tracking me?
Well, that's a good question. Now, can you imagine? What if your father was having an affair or something?
Okay.
You're in my contacts. That's permission according to the law.
But I still don't understand. You can run software like this on a keyboard. So why do you need the operation?
I'm trying to explain it in ways you can understand, but
this is the most important part. The mom makes a good point. She says you can do all of this from your keyboard. Why do you need to be connected up like this? She's asking the daughter. Notice who is being targeted. It's the young people that are being targeted. This is the young person, the daughter, who has embraced all of the technology. Okay? And the mom's asking her why. So let's listen.
Connection is so much more. While we were talking at exactly the same time,
just rewind
I understand, but the connection, I'm trying to explain it.
Dad, you can run software like this on a keyboard. So why do you need the operation?
I'm trying to explain it in ways you can understand, but the connection is so much more. While we were talking at exactly the same time, I wondered about the 80 days of rain, where it came from, why it was, what comes next. And I keyed into satellites just 30 seconds ago, so I can see the course of El Nino, and I can tap into pressure sensors along the Atlantic coast and barometric readings from the ships at sea. If I put all of that together, I'm there. I'm inside it, the tide, the depth of the sea, and the curl of the waves within me. And right now in Charles Street, Pasadena, a 15-year-old girl called Ethany Cross has written her first song and put it online, and she's got the sweetest voice. So when I combine all of that, it's joy. In my head, it is absolute joy.
She combines all of those experiences, okay? And she says the absolute joy. That's her rationale. What she's talking about, family, brothers, sisters, is the Matrix. Okay? Our brilliant author of the Matrix, I cannot remember her name. You can put it in the chat if you remember her name. The black woman who wrote the Matrix. Okay? Understood this when she downloaded that information and she wrote it out. What this girl is talking about in this show, okay? And the mom asks her, why did you need this when you could just do this from the internet? You could just do this from the keyboard. She's talking about she wants to be connected up to the Matrix. She wants to be virtual in her reality, not actually feel. She doesn't want to go to the ocean anymore. She doesn't want to go to the forest. She can do it all from being connected up. And the only next step after that, obviously, will be where she loses connection with the physical world altogether, and she just becomes part of that matrix. This is what the 5G and the Internet of Things and the machine-to-machine connections and the artificial intelligence, this is what they are looking for. This is what they're going for. Okay? And if you think I'm just making this up, you think, oh wow, he's just being, he's being over the top. This is the concerns that people are talking about. Facial recognition. Okay? Facial recognition software. Come on, where's my cursor? Trying to find it. There you go. Facial recognition. Okay. Artificial intelligence, meaning AI. Location tracking. Certificates of identification. I said in the beginning, right at the beginning, I said this isn't about the coronavirus and how 5G might be causing symptoms of corona and the lack of oxygen. This isn't about that. But they can maybe connect to this crisis going on now. Why? Because I just explained and showed how even in this country, they're going to be requiring people to use these contact tracing apps. And of course, we all know, it's been highly publicized, that Bill Gates has talked about his certificates of identification, of vaccination, I should say. Certificates of vaccinations, IDs. Certificate of vaccination IDs. And how the 5G society will allow all that type of tracking to take place instantly. Okay? the cashless society that's being moved towards, because money is being seen as a way that, you know, things like viruses can be transmitted, and money laundering can be prevented. And of course, non-centralized militarized applications. Okay, in other words, use of 5G and millimeter wave technology in ways that can be weaponized but decentralized. So you can control it from places from far away, whether it's drones or whether the use of the signal on its own. I'm not making any of this up. You can go and do the research yourself. It's a 5G, the speed of the information that they need to make all of that happen. Okay, and I have evidence because China already has a social credit system. Okay, China is like the future because China has the rollout of 5G. And what is China's social credit system? Well, China's social credit system, it says, it has been compared to Black Mirror, Big Brother, and every other type of dystopian future. Okay, what is it? China's social credit system. It's that China's social credit system expands that idea to all aspects of life, judging citizens' behavior and trustworthiness. Okay, if you're caught jaywalking, don't pay a court bill, play your music too loud, you could lose certain rights such as booking a flight or train ticket. What is it? As yet, there's no one social credit system. Instead, local governments have their own social record system that work differently, while unofficial private versions are operated at other companies. Okay? The private systems, though they aren't part of the official system, it tends to be a bit more confusing because the data is collected by private companies is expected to be hoovered up by the government in the future, and some of the data is already used in government trials. Okay? So China already has what's called a social credit system. The target eventually is that the government system will be countrywide, with businesses given a unified social credit code and citizens an identity number, all linked to a permanent record. Individuals will have ID linked codes. It's less of a score and more of a record. Okay, and it goes into the social credit system. And it says here, authorities make deductions for bad behavior like traffic violation and add points for good behavior such as donating to a charity. One regulation recently read specifically addresses stealing electricity. Of course, you have to get caught first or be reported by someone else. While facial recognition is infamously used to spot jaywalkers, in some cities, it's not so automated, so on and so on. Okay. In other words, it's the technology that's allowing them to have this social credit system that will monitor every aspect of their life. You can go on Wikipedia and read more about it. Okay. So China has already moved towards these things. They've moved towards a paradigm like this, but it's being used to punish and to limit people rather than to create this sort of utopia that they like for you to think about. Okay? And already here, okay, you can see that, and I'll mute this because I don't need the sound more. This is all about China and the facial recognition system. But this isn't just happening in China, because one of the 5G areas that I said in the UK is at King's Cross, and already as soon as you type in an article 2019 5G, ICO investigates King's Cross facial recognition use. So already in those areas that have 5G, they're using it in ways that China is also using it, and the 5G hasn't even been rolled out properly. This is the future of 5G. Okay? The future of 5G is not about you, okay? It's not about me. It's not about small companies and people's devices. It's about control. It's about monitoring your activities and about the new arms race between the global powers. And this arms race will be carried out terrestrially as well as extraterrestrially in space, on an international and local level. This is from my own council in my area, and it talks here in their council plan. It says here, continue to take forward smart city pilots using our Internet of Things network and advances in sensor technologies. How will they do that? Up the top here it says, prepare Croydon, where I live, for the future with 5G and small cell networks. I'm proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that this 5G is coming top down from national governments, international collaboration, down to the local areas. And you need to research what the plans are where you are for 5G. Don't get caught up on the infrastructure. Don't get caught up on the people saying, oh, well, is it safe to use from a technological point of view? Talk about what's the real meaning behind its use. This is the most important thing about 5G. Okay? I don't need to have the sound on for these things. Here, a Russian robot. They've armed this robot. Okay? This artificial intelligence here, they've armed him with machine guns. And now he's going to shoot his target. Okay? Look at the accuracy. Totally accurate. Look at this one here. Engineers test a 4-meter tall humanoid man-robot dubbed Method 2. So here you have a man inside this 4-meter tall robot. These are all the things that they're going to need 5G to control in the future. Because they need that speed, that interconnectivity, that quick speed. And it's going to be machine to machine. They're not going to need human operators. And the more insidious things, I'm not even going to show this video, but it talks about the 5G nanobots. So these are small artificial intelligent robots that can go inside the body. They're nanobots, meaning they are what's that? 10 to the minus 9 size. Okay? 10 to the minus 9. So a nanometer. So 10 to the minus 9 size of a meter. Or nanometers. Might be even smaller that I'm thinking about. Is it 10 to the minus 9? Minus 19? Okay, but you can look it up. This is what 5G is going to facilitate. So I've given a very long presentation. 3 hours. We need to, and what we need to be concerned about in terms of 5G. And why. Let's hear the final word from Professor Miller.
Wow, and you have 5 children.
I had 5 children. In fact, I had 5 children, 13 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren.
So what do you recommend?
So Professor Miller, very, very highly qualified professor, a university professor for many, many years in the field of radiation and biology and cancer, epidemiology, okay? He's a doctor, okay? Very, very erudite man. And he has a family, so he's not going to lie about this thing, and he's also experienced. Let's listen to what he just said. He says he has 5 children, he has many grandchildren.
Recommend to parents of children today in terms who hear about this issue? Many are working hard for policy change, and some get scared. I mean, this is really, it's a lot to take in when you first hear it.
I agree, it's difficult, but we coped with, at least my wife coped, with bringing up children without cell phones. We know it's possible. No particular reason why that shouldn't happen again. All we're doing is warning parents that they should find other ways in which their children are entertained and kept busy reading. And children learn to read fairly early in life and can get a great deal of benefit from reading. And that is done on books which don't emit radio frequency radiation.
Right. And I know that over 20 countries actually recommend either their public health authorities in various, or the government websites actually do recommend that children reduce exposure to cell phone radiation. And yet most people are unaware of the recommendations by their own governments. I know in the United States, this has not been stated in a way that tells parents, really, you should reduce exposure. Although the Department of Health of California as well as Connecticut both say that parents should work on reducing exposure to their children from cell phone radiation.
I agree. Well, the general feeling seems to have been, oh, there's no problem here, but they're wrong. And this is why we increasingly are trying to work with people in localities and get the message out that we're dealing with something that is even now hazardous and can be even more hazardous if exposure continues and gets greater. I mean, the idea that you're putting up satellites to bombard the Earth with radio frequency radiation from satellites, it's criminal, and governments need to do something about it.
So you can watch the rest of his interview. He says it there, it's criminal. Okay? It's criminal. And he's recommending that children in particular limit the amount of electromagnetic radiation that they get from cell phone, mobile phone, towers, so on and so on. And as we said, with this new paradigm that they are trying to put forth of the 5G, millimeter wave, small cell networks, high dense areas, okay, how would that be possible? It's criminal, and it's nothing less. Bombarding us from space, things that we have no choice in. Is that the type of future world that people want to live in? Do we want to live in a future world that has these sorts of applications, facial recognition, nanobots, artificial intelligence that are weaponized? We need to be concerned about 5G.
Welcome everyone.
Okay, so what can you do? My final slide. Educate yourself on the technology and electromagnetic radiation. Okay, monitor your use and exposure of radio frequency devices by an EMF meter. I've bought one and it's really educated me on my use. Okay, and what it's done is it's showed me that how much radiation I'm actually exposed to, and it's made me change my habits and habits of my children. Whether people say it's safe or not, if there are limits that have been put in place, they've been put in place for a reason. Monitor your neighborhoods and group together with your community for any concerns. Look for the things that they're putting up in your neighborhood and don't just accept it. And group together if one voice isn't enough. Write to any company or any government that you feel is infringing on your rights, and be sure to document any of the information. They're very slippery, these companies, okay? And they're trying to deceive you. I already showed earlier in this presentation how they're trying to be deceptive about the 5G rollout in the future. Okay, and if possible, protect yourself. This is the most important one, and future generations, by creating land covenants, which of course requires us to focus on ownership of land. We need to have land that we can set aside and say we don't want certain things on it. But in order to do that, we need to do things like build wealth. We need to maintain our families and our community structure. Okay, so those are some of the things you can do. For anyone that has watched the video or will be watching it in the future on YouTube, I thank you for your time. We need to protect our global commons, our atmosphere. We have a right to have a safe and healthy electromagnetic atmosphere around us. It's your right, it's your children's right, and it's your children's children's right for us to pass that on to them. My name is David Roots. I thank you for watching David Roots TV.